Hello and welcome to Media Musings. Um, you know, a special welcome to anyone who is lurking in the chat and/or watching in the future. Now, this week we are beginning our catch-up month with Roland Emmerich's 1996 hit Independence Day, which surprisingly simultaneously aged really well and really badly.
Happy Treason Day, ungrateful colonials, I say, as I crack open a Danish lager and toast you.
Oh, the irony.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I know it's not
Yesterday,
great lager, but it's all I had on hand, folks.
Yeah.
yesterday was nail day and my dad's birthday, so we did fireworks and stuff because we're not getting together for the 4th. But I did my nails with blood red, black, and gold instead of anything patriotic or nationalistic because
It's like, this is my last 4th of July that's not going to be in America, folks. So I'm practicing. So what I've done, right, I've got donuts, I've got beer, I've got an energy drink for later just in case.
Yeah.
Like, unfortunately, this is Britain, so I don't have a gun, but I think I have everything else. Am I good? Can I go? Sorry, I had to make that joke. Like,
Yeah.
I'll vouch for you, and I
Like,
was born here.
Look, I just flat, right? I'm gonna say this now about this movie. If you cry at this movie, you should be automatically eligible for American citizenship, no questions asked.
Yeah.
Like, it is that cheesy, that American, and that just... It's the one movie that makes me patriotic for America. And I'm British, so,
Yeah.
you know.
But really, the only reason why, the TLDR is because there was a big bad for humanity to get their shit together and come together. But
Oh no, I fully accept also that this movie hits different post-COVID when we know that there is not going to be a global response to an external threat to our lives. Like, this movie hits different,
now,
but it still hits.
well, here's the thing. Might be like there's a difference between like an unseen virus and like humans just have always been pretty bad with pandemic responses, but when you actually have a thinking entity that you can point guns at, like I think
Yes.
that's the big thing. You can't shoot a virus. You can't point
That's
guns at a virus.
That's exactly what you beat me to saying. This movie, right? We will come together as a species because we have one thing in common as a species. If we can shoot it, we will.
Yeah.
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 But it's
And
such a good movie. I do love
And
it.
like, I do think as a species, like, there's the great line in this one of we will not go quietly into the night. I do genuinely think just as a species, there are enough people in the species who've got what I call the fuck it gene. The people who literally would just go, do you know what? Fuck it. If I go down, I'm taking you fuckers with me.
Yeah.
And like, that's what's gonna save our species. Like, those people are gonna save our species.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily
Absolutely.
think I'm one of them, but they're the people who are going to save our species. Like,
Now,
have you ever seen the Tumblr post about humans interacting with aliens?
which one?
The one where humans are like, can adapt to anything, and it's like aliens have the last protocol is just sending a human.
Yeah. Oh,
Like,
the
if all
humans
else
are
fails,
space
send in a
orcs
human.
trope
Humans
of
and space orcs.
yeah.
Also, I am going to eat these donuts because I've not eaten all day, so, like, yeah.
Yeah. So I realized something.
Go on.
I realized that I'm pretty much the only atheist YouTuber that knows that Focus on the Family has a censorship guide disguised as a review service. So I feel that it's appropriate to include, to take a look at what Focus on the Family has to say about the piece of media we're covering if they have an article on it.
Absolutely, yes, I think we should do that.
Yeah.
Because again, it's media literacy versus being spoon-fed your media.
Yeah.
So, very good point.
So, let's begin with now this is an older article. It's not in their usual breakdown, because usually Plugged In has a breakdown where they go through all of the elements like in the movie, like where they go like all the everything that can be considered sexual content, everything that can be considered violent content, other negative elements, positive elements, spiritual elements, and whatnot. This is just pretty much a straight up review, but anyways.
Quick question: do we know when the review was written? Because a review of Independence Day now is going to be very different to a review 25 years ago when it came out.
No, because I don't know, because also it's in their DVD and streaming section, so
okay, so it's probably more recent than the actual initial release. To be fair, I don't think they would have had a website in 1997.
Yeah, well, I think what they, because I think it started as like an actual physical magazine. So I think for older media that they covered, I think they just uploaded their old articles.
Okay, so what I'm going to do while you're loading that up, I'm going to put everyone in the mind of 1997.
Okay.
So in 1997, the emergency alert system was introduced in the United States on January 1st. So this movie is bang up to date on the tech for the time. Right? This was the year the first Harry Potter book was released. Book, not movie.
But okay.
Bill Clinton was still president.
Yeah. Yeah, he was pretty much starting his last term.
Yeah. Tony Blair had just won the election that year in May. And for those who follow Eurovision, the song Love Shine a Light by Katrina and the Waves won that year. It was a hopeful time, is what I'm getting at here.
Yeah, so this is from the end of the article.
Yeah. There's a couple of other bits that I want to point out. This was the year the Russian-Chechen peace treaty was signed.
I am sorry, spaghetti guys.
Let's see, what other major things happened that year? This was the year in which the first episode of South Park aired. How old do you feel? This was the year Diana died.
Wow.
Yeah, in August. So, like, what I'm getting at here is this was, and we have to really, really emphasize this. This was pre 9/11. This was pre global war on terror. But it was post fall of the Berlin Wall, post Operation Desert Storm. So it was in this tiny little 3 to 5 year period where America not only wanted to be the quote unquote leader of the free world, but was actually seeming to be stepping up and doing it.
Yeah.
And everything was opening up, people were electing centre-left governments, and that's where we were. Like, we were starting to become aware of, we'd fixed the ozone layer, and we were starting to become aware of other global warming issues. This was, like, if someone said to you, if you could go back to a moment in time and change the course of like, the history of the English-speaking world, 1997 wouldn't be a bad place to start. So,
yeah. So, in addition to impersonal violence and mass destruction, adults will object to the film's frequent uses of profanity and the Lord's name in vain.
Okay, can I just say, if I'm a fighter pilot looking at an alien spaceship and that thing is opening the fuck up and I can't hit it with a missile, saying the words holy God is not taking the Lord's name in vain. That's a heartfelt prayer to the Almighty.
Also inappropriate for youngsters are occasional crudities, the enthusiastic endorsement of cigar smoking.
If I'm going to die, I'm going to die with a good cigar between my lips.
Yeah. And a brief scene featuring a scantily clad stripper whose career choice is condoned.
Oh. That hasn't aged well, has it?
Still, Independence Day is not without its virtues. It depicts alcoholism as unhealthy and sacrifice as noble. A climatic offensive against the aliens provides a dramatic illustration of John 15:13 for those of you who didn't have the Bible drilled into your mind for 6 years of your schooling life.
Oh, it's the no greater love line, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That a man laid down his life for his friends. Yes.
Yeah.
The President of the United States is portrayed as an honest man of personal and professional integrity who cares more about people and principle than he does about politics. In addition, the final third of the movie deserves praise for its celebration of parent-child relationships, the institution of marriage, and a kindly Jewish man's rediscovery of faith.
Okay. Listen. Listen, right? I have opinions.
Yeah.
I'm not going to comment on the Jewish thing because I'm not Jewish. Yeah. But I know plenty of Jews who don't believe in and don't talk to God and they're still Jewish.
Yeah.
I have one Jewish friend in particular who every time we go out for a meal chooses a Chinese place and deliberately orders the prawns. So just don't, okay? Just don't with that one. Okay, like that's a monumental misunderstanding of what being Jewish is. The institution of marriage. Okay, yeah, you're gonna get married by a military chaplain in a fuckery little office room somewhere, but you're only gonna do it because you think you're gonna die. After you spend the first third or so of the movie. Like, it's made very clear that the reason he hasn't already married her is because he's ashamed of what she does for a living.
Yeah.
And he's trying to climb the ranks. And it doesn't do for an officer to have a stripper for a wife.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
You know, the first thing that they tell you when you leave basic is don't go out and marry a stripper.
Yeah. And what did he do? So, but then again, he's a Marine, so
yeah.
I was with Ring through like a deployment and like how long was your contract? Like 4.5 years? I'm allowed to make those jokes. I've met Marine
it was
wives.
3 years plus training, so yeah, it was like 3.5 years.
Yeah, I had to put up with Marine and Army wives for 3.5 years. I'm allowed to make those jokes.
Yeah.
Please don't get me started.
Yeah.
And what was the other thing? The institution of marriage, a Jewish man refining his faith, and
Parental-child relationships.
yeah, bullshit your child. Lie to her that her mother's sleeping when she's quite clearly dying in the next room if she's not already dead. And like, let's treat the little black boy as comedic, as like a comedy character that you can like knock about as humor, because that's okay. Like, I take issue, like, look, and because it's Will Smith, I'm going to say it, right? There is a direct correlation between movies that show little black boys being tapped so hard they say, ow, that hurts, even in jest and in friendliness, growing up to be big black boys who punch other black boys who insult their wives. There is a correlation there, folks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you know, that being said, Plugged In doesn't exactly do what we do. They like to masquerade as a review site.
Yeah.
But really, it's a censorship guide for, Christian parents.
And I will say, I haven't acknowledged the comment about sacrifice as virtue, because I want to put a pin in that, because I have a whole ass list of shit to go through about that shit.
Yeah.
Like, I have a whole ass I have opinions. Okay, I have opinions.
Yeah.
Because I hate how this movie manipulated my emotions. Because I know what I know, and I know what I stand for, and I know what my own sensibilities are. And yet this movie still made me cry when the drunk sacrificed himself.
Yeah.
And that's something, when you're watching media, you have to understand how media is manipulating you and your emotions.
Yeah.
That's what media is for. And there's a really interesting discussion to be had about how this movie manipulates people. And how this movie, like, you can be the most left-wing, like, anti-government, anti-military person on the planet, but you're a liar if you live in the English-speaking world and you tell me you didn't cry when he stood up on that truck and made that speech.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. And it plays into a lot of tropes that we need to have a good chat about.
Yeah. Sacrifice being good or bad really depends on the situation. Preferably, you should stay alive.
Yeah. But this movie is very Christian. It's very American. And it's very 90s. Like, it's very naive. It's very pre 9/11.
And that being said, it's not Christian and American enough for Focus on the Family.
What did they want? The president wearing a cross?
Because, because in case you didn't see it on the screen, the final verdict was it packs quite a punch, but maybe you should dodge it.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, and one of these days I'm going to get around to discussing my philosophy on film reviews. So, but first, I think we should get into our discussion proper.
Yeah. Okay, so this movie, right? Again, this is what I mean by manipulative. This movie, like, whoever edited this shit definitely believed in subliminal hits.
Yeah.
I just want to put that out there from the start. Because, like, the first third of this movie will just randomly, for no apparent plot-related reason, cut to an image of American nationalism. Like,
Yeah.
it opens on an American flag on the moon. It routinely cuts back to the White House, the Statue of Liberty, and random American flags.
Yeah.
It routinely, like, it makes a point of, like, valorizing and glorifying military service.
Yeah.
It's not. This movie is a propaganda piece. It
Also,
absolutely is a propaganda piece. It's American propaganda.
fun fact: this is one of the very many movies about that feature pilots as a big plot point where the pilot characters aren't Air Force. There's only one movie that I can think of that actually has characters in the Air Force, and that was Doctor Strangelove.
Yeah. No, like, please explain to me. Perhaps there's something I'm missing.
Yeah.
Maybe the Americans can explain to me as a foreigner. What the fuck? Cutting to the statue of the raising of the flag on Iwo Jima against the sunset has got to do with anything in this movie?
I'd say it's like, and this is acknowledging that the movie is propaganda. It's it's a sub, like, basically it's there to get the coming together for a common cause vibe going.
Yeah. That's what it is. Like, it spends the first 15 minutes of this movie setting America up as the avatar for the world.
Well, I mean, Hollywood movies, they be like that. Like, part of the reason why, and it's the same with like police procedurals and things. The US military and the cops work with Hollywood and give them access, but they get it, say in the script and how well the military or the police officers will be portrayed in that film. So that it actually is a propaganda arm for both.
It is. And absolutely, if you want an example of that, go look up how John Wayne went and asked permission to make the Green Berets movie.
Yeah.
And then when they found out that it was basically a pro-Vietnam propaganda movie, they gave him tanks and weapons and all kinds of shit to play with on set.
Yeah.
So, yeah. To go live out his cowboy fantasy in Vietnam. That's a movie we should do at some point. Just from a historical perspective, it's historically accurate. But you don't want to see me rant about that movie for 3 hours. So maybe not.
Never mind.
So yeah, we've got all the America imagery, and then we've got It's the End of the World as We Know It playing on the radio.
Yeah.
Which, look, I appreciate that it was the 90s and we weren't the most subtle of audiences.
Yeah.
And media literacy was not great, especially like when most of us either weren't old enough to remember the Cold War or had been raised in the swallow the propaganda and accept it media literacy education of the Cold War. But that was unsubtle. That was an anvil to the head.
Speaking of, have either of you heard it just released Fall Out Boy's cover of We Didn't Start the Fire? They updated it with all new stuff. It is a fucking banger. It is so fucking good.
I think I have, yeah.
It's so good. I just heard it the other day, and like it's been really big on TikTok, and like that's my main area that I make content for.
Yeah.
But holy hell, it's phenomenal. I recommend everybody go listen to it because Fall Out Boy understood the assignment. because other people have tried to do updated covers of that song where they basically just talk about all the bad shit that's happened. But Fall Out Boy understood you have to toss in the good with the bad, and that it's kind of just a snapshot of things. And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
anachronistic, like where it's not coming in order. So I think that also helps give it that vibe of like all this shit is happening. And when you think about, from 1980 to like, 2023, all of the shit that has happened in that span of time, you realize, holy shit. Like there really are no words when you actually reflect on it.
That's why I opened this stream with "This is what was happening in 1997."
Yeah.
Because Google barely existed. I don't think it existed at all. Twitter certainly didn't exist.
Yeah.
Facebook, like, people were still using Friendster and MySpace.
If they were using the internet at all.
Yeah, like the internet still came on a disc, a floppy disk at that. Like, email was the big technology of the year. Like, phones still had black and white screens and giant ass aerials.
Yeah.
Like, your phone, like, you've probably put your phone down from 1997 somewhere, and it's probably still sat where you left it with 1 bar of battery left on it.
Yeah. Like
Like
all the phones shown in the movie were about top of the line for 96.
Yeah. Like, this was before we even got the idea of friggin' LED screens. Like, people talk about the old brick Nokias, the old Nokia phones. This is before then.
Yeah.
Like, that technology, they probably were running those entire computer systems on about 4 gig of RAM, if that. Like,
yeah,
it only took, what was it? What was it? 8 KB of RAM to put a man on the moon in the 60s or something daft.
yeah,
Like, if you open a Word document and save it blank now, that Word document uses more memory and more storage than the entire computer system that put a man on the moon.
yeah.
That's how far we've come. And that's just technologically. On the other hand, you've got politically, like, Bill Clinton was still in the White House.
Yeah.
Like, this was before this was before he hadn't had sexual relations with that woman. This was before we'd seen the dress.
Yeah.
Like, and when you think about all of that time, like, I wasn't even in double digits in 1997. Like, this movie is one of the earliest movies I ever remember seeing.
Yeah.
Because I was allowed to watch things that really were not appropriate for a 4-year-old. But,
Yeah.
But that's why I opened it with that, because I know we've got some younger members of the audience, and we occasionally have, like, what Chaos is, like, 21. Chaos wasn't even born when this movie came out. Yeah. And it's like, it's really difficult to explain. Like, this was before X Factor and American Idol.
Yeah.
This was like, the more you think about it, like, in 1997, Tony Blair ran and targeted the demographic of the Mondeo man for votes. Like, the university was free in the UK. Like, so much has changed. And yet, that at that point in history, there was hope, right?
Yeah.
There was hope.
Or
at that
how
point.
you put it before the stream, President Whitmore is a Republican that you can actually see yourself supporting.
Yeah. Like, this is a Republican president. Like, it's quite clearly a Republican president. White guy, vaguely Christian, military history. He's kind of obviously set to look a bit like Kennedy, but he's clearly a Republican.
Yeah.
Like,
You know, the black woman voted for the other guy.
The black woman voted for the other guy.
California's not too happy with him.
Yeah. Right. So, yeah, he's a Republican, but he's not. Like, when last can you honestly, hand on heart, say that there was a Republican on the presidential ballot that you looked at and you thought, you know, if he wins, it might be a bit rough, but no one's in any real danger here. Like, it's just business as usual. Like, when last can you honestly, hand on heart, say that? Like, even Mitt Romney, we were worried he was going to turn America Mormon. But that was a worry. That was he was never going to actually do that. And Mitt Romney was probably the last of the presidential candidates who allowed himself to be pulled to the center in order to try and win a presidential race rather than leaving the center to try and win a presidential race. Like, that election with Obama and Romney was probably the last time where the presidential candidates moved from their opposite political stances to the center rather than from the center out to win.
Yeah.
And that election, Mitt Romney and Obama, is nearly 15 years after this movie.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're right. I can't really think of...
Because, I mean, George W. Bush, right, we couldn't stand him. He started the global war on terror, and in hindsight, he was a terrible president. But no one looked at him beating Al Gore, and when that fucker's, like, if that fuck, you know, no one saw him lose or saw him elected and feared for their lives, like, genuinely feared for their lives.
Yeah, no one saw him get elected and had, you know, a nervous breakdown that unfortunately got memed into, like, eternity.
Yeah, like, you know, no one saw Mitt Romney lose and went, oh shit, his supporters are going to try and take over the country.
Yeah.
Like, no one saw Mitt Romney lose and went, shit, batten down the hatches and lock up the Capitol. And that's, like, we forget, because we've lived through it, right? We're adults and we've lived through it. We forget how quickly the English-speaking world, and I say the English-speaking world as in the white English-speaking world, America and the UK, we forget how quickly things have gone from the worst thing you could be as a president was a man who, like, made the occasional, like, cock up in a speech.
Yeah.
And, you know, started an illegal war. Like, but that was after he'd been elected. Like, there was this movie really encapsulates for me that sense of hope that we had in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And, like, again, I was very, very young, so I looked back on it with rose-tinted glasses anyway. But there was a sense of hope, especially before 9/11, where America was leading the world. America was the shining house on the hill.
Yeah.
We were all looking to America and we're saying, you are going to lead us into the 21st century of technological advancement, world peace, like the Cold War's over. You know, we're gonna be rid of nukes within 15 years. And there's gonna be world peace and peace, love, joy, you know, all that. And then 9/11 happened. But it wasn't just 9/11. Like, other things were going on at the same time as well. But they weren't as... Like, if you said to me now that the US president, that the CIA is funding terrorists in a country. Just roll with me. If you told me that now, and you told me the president knew about it, I'd just shrug and I'd go, yeah, that tracks. If you told someone that in 1997, they would be out on the streets protesting that shit.
Yeah.
Because it was so abnormal and it was so wrong. And we've
that was
allowed
before.
ourselves.
No, that was before MK Ultra came to light. And, you know, the CIA's like fucking mind control experiments.
WikiLeaks,
Or
Chelsea Manning.
destabilizing, you know, countries in Central and South America.
Yeah.
Or you know, why didn't I know about Area 51? Plausible deniability. The CIA director says to the president.
And yet, the last time America had an election, the guy stood up and said, if there are aliens, I'm going to tell you. Do you really think you'd have been told, fucker? Do you really think if there are aliens after you stood up on a platform and said, I'm going to release all the information if it's there, do you really think they aren't locking that shit down and hiding it from you? That's the beauty of a conspiracy theory, right? You can't prove it and you can't disprove it. But 1997, like, even the idea that in 1997 we looked at it and we were like, there would have been people who would have looked at it and gone, oh, the aliens are coming, cool, let's throw a party.
Yeah.
Instead of now where we look at it and we go,
take us with
dead.
you.
I mean, honestly, for fuck's sake, there is a Church of Trump now. They made their golden calf of him, you know, and at this point, the stupidity of people does not surprise me. Like, I made a TikTok about it yesterday because I came across a video of a woman and she's recording video of a fountain, like a sprinkler fountain at like a park. And she starts saying, oh, they're putting these chemicals in the water in order to make a rainbow. It's a sunny day. And I'm like, tell me you failed elementary school science without telling me you failed elementary school science. Do you know what a fucking rainbow is? And these people vote. And they vote for Trump. It's terrifying.
Like, tell me you've never seen the front cover of a Pink Floyd album.
Like there are people today, and I may be included among them, who will say Alien Annihilation 2024.
Giant Meteor 2024. You know what? We've had a good run. Let's just call it quits.
We've had a
Let's
good
end
run,
it. We're good. We're good.
Like, I am still like, there's a tiny hope. Like, if there's a dog uprising and they take over the world, I'm cool with that.
Yeah,
I'm cool with that. I would be perfectly happy to like answer to a president Great Dane and a vice president German Shepherd.
But what if the president's a Chihuahua?
I was just, you beat me to it. In that case, I might vote for like opponent German Shepherd.
Yeah, because Chihuahuas are angry little fuckers.
But I mean, how would we tell the difference?
Yeah, I mean, Trump does kind of have the temperament of a Chihuahua, like very yippy and nervous, and starts running at the mouth like really bad when nervous. Never shuts up.
Now I've just got
to never bites above the ankles.
His leg, like, I mean, fucking Trump's Chihuahua.
I've now got a mental image of a Chihuahua in a Trump wig.
Or
you're welcome.
Or we're gonna fight like hell.
Yep. Yeah. Trump is he gives off Chihuahua energy.
He does. He has such, those little hands don't help. Like, I mean, look, do you remember when Mitt Romney was running for election and we had binders full of women and mittens kittens and, you know, everyone was taking the piss out of his itchy pants? Like, that was the worst you could, like, that was... Am I making a case for a President Romney?
Yeah.
Excuse me, I need to go low down.
I mean, just here's a thought experiment. Where would we be as a country, like yours and mine, had the Supreme Court not intervened and helped steal the election for Bush in Bush v. Gore in 2000?
Where would the world be if we'd have had a president Gore?
That's what I'm saying. Like,
Even
where
if he'd
would
have
we
only had a
been?
4-year term.
Actually, for those of you who aren't aware of it, there is this YouTube channel called Alternate History Hub, and there is a video about what if Gore won in 2000.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
Same. I mean, because we probably wouldn't have gotten involved in the war on terror.
Well, he wouldn't have needed to impress Daddy for going digging for oil, would he? Because his daddy
Also
wouldn't
have
Bush.
taken and disregarded the warnings that, hey, some shit's going to go down before it happened. Like, there were warnings about 9/11.
Like some of the reports said that the inability to have a cabinet running in time probably contributed to the to us not to us being blindsided as we were by the attack. Like in the video there is like a brief 9/11 might not have happened, but if it did, we would have only gone into Afghanistan.
Yeah. And it'd have been an in and out. It wouldn't have been a 15-year job.
Yeah. Well, not like, but and like that's the thing. We might not have the same relations with Saudi Arabia that we do currently, considering 17 of the 19 attackers came from Saudi Arabia. So
Oh, and also No Child Left Behind wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, and we'd probably be taking climate change more seriously. And because we were focused more on science back then in the pandemic of 2020, I'm pretty sure things would have been handled a lot differently too.
Yeah, the video actually mentions that Gore would have used Hurricane Katrina to say this is the shit I was talking about. We need to get on this.
Yeah, like
Katrina was 2005.
Six. Yeah. It was also
205. Yeah.
The only reason I remember is because I was recovering from my knee surgery and I was on my parents' couch and it was like a fucking out of body experience, like talking, like the news is on and I'm kind of like half asleep, on the couch, and they're talking about all those people that were trapped in the football stadium.
Was Katrina the one that happened on Boxing Day?
No, Katrina was in August.
There was one that happened on Boxing Day, I think 2006.
But I'm pretty sure it was August of 2005 for Katrina.
Yeah. Oh no, Boxing Day was the Indian Ocean earthquake and tsunami, 2004.
Yeah.
Killed a quarter of a million people.
It's just gonna keep getting worse.
Yeah.
Gotta love
Al Gore would have done that. And Al Gore would have probably built a platform of, because he'd have been well into his second term by then. But he would have been on a platform of, we need to sort out. Didn't they have the there was a 2001 climate agreement that everyone breached? I'm sure there was. Was it?
I think so. Like, it rings a bell. Another thing, Bush absolutely cocked up the Katrina response. Gore would not have done that. So the distrust of government and the FEMA death camps, that's why we can't have nice things like universal health care, would not have been a thing.
Yeah, like you all know I'm a fan of Top Gear. Top Gear went to New Orleans in like 2013, and it was still a wreck. Like their plan was to drive cars to New Orleans and then try and sell them. They got there, saw the state of the place, and rang a local church mission and donated those cars to victims of Katrina. Because there's a line in the show, I remember it clear as day. I can hear Clarkson in my head saying, now, you know, you'd have thought the richest country in the world would have fixed this by now.
I mean, there are places in states like Kentucky where there have been like UNICEF workers that say that it is worse than a third world country. Like 10 of the poorest cities in the entirety of the United States are in Kentucky, and Mitch McConnell and Rand Paul don't give a flying fuck, yet they keep getting voted in.
Yeah.
Make it make sense. The math is not mathing.
Indoctrination is a hell of a drug.
But yeah, so like this movie, because we've gone a bit off topic. Like, okay, so Kyoto was 1992. Al Gore would have absolutely held America to that shit, or at least tried.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, and then there's a few little flashes. Like Ring and I both noticed one of the guys in one of the shots had 101st patch.
Yeah. So, and I will say that means he probably deployed with the 101st sometime in his military career, because there are two patches that you wear on your shoulder. There's your unit patch, which you wear, you know, to show what unit you are currently in, and then there's your deployment patch, where if you've deployed with a unit, any unit you've ever deployed with, you can wear that patch on the other soldier. So like, say, I was a chicken sandwich because I was in the 101st and I deployed with the 101st, so I had an eagle on both shoulders. Chicken sandwich.
Okay, Hawks.
Occasionally, you just come out with shit that's just, look. I don't glorify the military. Like, it's very well known that I refused to even let Ring propose to me until after they left the army. But like, military humor's funny.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna put that out there. It is funny. It's
Well, I mean, when there's a chance of dying and you've got that camaraderie and brotherhood, like, that does lead to a bit of humor.
I wish.
I mean, I'd give you some of mine. I've got more than enough.
I mean, yeah, you've already got dibs on mine. So, like, yeah. But yeah, you've got this president who's Republican, family man. Even his name is Republican, like Whitmore. Yeah. Like, your great-grandfather had a plantation somewhere, didn't he, bud? Like, that's, you know, Whitmore, Whitman, like, it's that kind of, it's a white is in the name.
My headcanon, I put it in the private chat. My headcanon is in the timeline branching off where Gore won the election. That's how we get a President Whitmore. You know, an upstanding, decent Republican, humanity coming together, you know, to fight a outside catastrophe. Like, we are in the darkest timeline.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
It's like when I can sit here and make a valid argument for looking back on it and saying we should have had a President Romney, something's wrong.
Like, I just realized something. This is fucking Wilsonian propaganda. And I just ruined Independence Day for us all.
It's just the meme that nope, can't argue it. can't.
Because it's the world coming together under the leaders, to follow behind America's lead. It's Wilsonian interventionism propaganda.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the thing about Wilsonianism is, right?
Yeah.
Wilsonianism was definitely contributed to post-war American internationalism, like the decline of isolationism, the Marshall Plan, all of that jazz. So it has its good and its bad points.
Yeah.
And it's not like it has its good and its bad points. There's nuance in the discussion about Wilsonianism. It's not an ideology that you can look at and go, no, that's evil, throw that away.
Yeah.
But it's not an ideology either that you can go, oh, that's good, let's worship that for 150 years.
Yeah.
Like, it's somewhere in between.
It's a mixed bag.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if we go a la carte, we could make it work,
Well,
just like.
And I will say that it is a less the Wilsonian, like the Wilsonian, image is a lot less toxic than the Wilsonian interventionism that we have in real life.
Yeah, but that's what propaganda's for, isn't it? It like tones down the bad points, beefs up the good ones, and spins it to you till you accept it.
I mean, because at least in Independence Day, we have the president telling the former head of the CIA, "Go fuck yourself. You're fired. You're no longer Secretary of Defense."
Yeah. Which honestly, more of them should do that.
We also got mad scientist data, like that's nice.
Yeah, and we've got like the it's not anti-intellectual.
Yeah.
Which is nice. Like, you can't just fix this by pointing a gun at it. You also have to use your brain. It's syncretic in the way it approaches religion. Like, you can be Christian, you can be Jewish, there are Muslims shown in it, or you can be no religion at all, but you're still human and you're still part of the team.
Yeah.
It's very syncretic. Like, I remember once I talked about maybe one day writing an article or an essay about how America thinks it's the Second Roman Republic. This movie fits definitely right into that.
Yeah.
Like the propaganda arm of that. Because like there's the line in this movie of the president, which again, I want to talk like the intelligence of the politics of this movie. Like, this movie is cheesy and it's dumb, but also like, when last did you read a line in any newspaper or see a line on any comedy, satire, news, communication channel that said the words, "When stood before Congress, the president looks less like a former fighter pilot and more like Oliver Twist with his ball out begging for more"? Like, that's an intelligent commentary. Like, that is an intelligent way of bringing someone down.
Yeah.
And like, she tries to wave it off as it's just an attack on your age, but it's not. It's an attack on his probably spending too much. Like, also, why he's going to Congress with a begging bowl.
Also, his demeanor.
Yeah. And but it's also an attack on his age, like Little Orphan Oliver.
Yeah.
But it's not entirely without a basis. And when last did you hear political commentary like that?
Also, when was the last president that actually served in the military?
Bush Senior?
Yeah.
No. Clinton never served, did he? No.
Like, because that's the thing is, like, the former fighter pilot.
I
And I
mean,
mean, I'm
No,
not militaristic.
Clinton served.
Okay, Clinton served. All right. But yeah, no, like, so that's been decades since we've had a president who is commander-in-chief of the military but never served. I'm not saying it should be a requirement, but I do think that, it's a lot easier to send people off to die if you've never stood beside them.
Oh,
yeah.
yes.
So, like,
yeah.
I wouldn't say I want a necessarily hard and fast rule of you can't be president if you didn't serve, but I do think it would be better for the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, i.e. the president, to have served because, again, it's easier when you're not there seeing the human cost of war.
No, Clinton didn't serve. Bush Senior was a Navy pilot. Bush Jr. was first lieutenant of the Texas Air National Guard. But
Yeah, but
never
he got a
seen
cushy
overseas duty.
post. Yeah, no,
he'd
he
never
got a
seen
cushy
overseas
post.
duty.
That doesn't count.
So, like, for me, like...
Kuwait
For
isn't
me-
a deployment.
No, but for me, like, I can sort of say, if you wanted to set up a system of government now, what I would say is, right, you have your military and you have your presidency. What I would say is, the only way a president should be allowed to declare war is if the heads of all the branches of the military agree to it in a blind vote, unanimously.
I
I mean,
mean,
technically, the president can't declare war. Congress is the only one that has that ability.
Like, if you were going to set one up, like, Congress would
Yeah.
have to do it, but they only need a simple majority to declare war.
well,
So, like-
I mean, we technically haven't been in a declared war since like Vietnam.
No, Vietnam wasn't a war. Vietnam was a police action.
Yeah, so like since like Korea, maybe World War II.
I don't think America ever properly declared war in World War II. I think they just reacted to Pearl Harbor.
No, we did. We did.
Mm.
Yeah, Congress did declare war.
Congress declared. Yeah, no, Congress declared war World War II. What about Korea?
Because I know for a fact that Congress declared war for World War II because the senator the senator or representative from Montana, who is actually the first congresswoman in American history, voted no for both World War I and World War II.
Yeah, the last formal declaration of war was... Actual declaration of war was declaration of war on Romania as part of the Second World War.
So if you count, military actions and fighting as well as actually declared wars,
then
the United States
Iraq
has been fighting as of 2001 for 228 of 245 years. So add 2 more years to that, 230 out of 247. Like over 90% of the time that the U.S. has existed, we've been involved in armed conflict around the world.
Yeah, because Vietnam was a military engagement authorized by Congress, but it wasn't technically a war.
That's a depressing statistic.
Yeah. But yeah, like, where's my next point that I want to make? While we're talking about wars America's been with, all the jumps to other countries in the world. They jumped to Iraq and Russia and then Israel and then Palestine and then Britain and then Sydney.
Yeah.
Like, America has understood since the Second World War, right, that the way you get out, that the way you don't have an economic collapse is by going to war. Or the way you recover from an economic collapse is by going to war.
Yeah.
Like, that's why it was so weird when they did Iraq and Afghanistan then, rather than in like 2009. And why we've all been, like, anyone who's paid attention has been on the edge of our seat since 2009, waiting for America to declare war somewhere. Because when mortgage rates go up, boots go down. Like, that's how that works. But this movie is really interesting to me because this movie imagines a future or a vaguely alternate timeline. It's really weird to see the Twin Towers as part of the New York skyline.
Yeah.
But imagines an alternate timeline, and I'm really beating this point home because it's so important, whereby you can have a center-right president who cares about people, is not a racist, is not some fucking wacko who thinks the second coming of Christ is going to come if Israel manages to expand its borders.
Yeah.
And
who
actually gives, like...
who stays behind in the White House so that he can hopefully help keep people from panicking.
Yeah, like, who does the right things, makes the right calls even when he knows he's putting his life on the line. Like, I'm not being funny, okay? How many white women in 2010, let's say 2010, if they found Michelle Obama, like, how many Republican white women, if they found Michelle Obama in a bombed out car somewhere, do you think would put her on a truck and drive her to the White House or drive her to the president? Like, hand on heart, like, how many left-wingers do you think could have done the same for Ivanka?
Yeah.
I don't just fucking left her. Like, what use is she? And I'll admit that. Like, I don't think I'd have found it in my heart to try and help her. Because what use would she have been in that situation?
Yeah.
Like, from a basic point of view, if she's a human being, yes. But from a, we have to get her to the president because she might actually be useful. Useful for what? Like, if aliens had have come when Trump was president, we would have been fucked.
That's another thing about President Whitmore. Like, you get the vibe that he's doing it for actual patriotism and love of country, not power and, like, lobbying money.
And,
yeah, like, he cares about people. He
like,
cares about human beings.
He's patriotic. He's not a nationalist.
Yeah, that's the difference. Like, he cares about his country. He cares about his people. His immediate reaction, like, this is a really weird thing as well that's not commented on much. The American president's immediate reaction the moment he gets intelligence that may be of use is to share it worldwide.
Yeah.
Like, when last was there a president who would do that? Like, when last was there a president who would pick up the red phone to Moscow and say, we can fix this?
Yeah.
Like, I think there's ever been a president that would do that. Kennedy used the red phone, but, you know, he had to be pushed to do it. Nixon used it a couple of times. Like, you know, America has got this really weird, like, in the last 20 years, America's gone really quite isolationist.
Yeah.
In its foreign policy. Not it's not caring about other countries anymore, but in that it stopped trying to lead and started trying to control.
I mean, America does tend to go isolationist after being in a war that goes badly for them.
But, like, even, like, someone in the comment, spaghettiized. I'm apologize.
Spaghetti Geist or
Spaghetti Geist. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm dyslexic. I struggle with long words that are like that. I don't know about you, but when Trump was elected, especially given his rhetoric in the run up to the election, I know I was not the only person who was worried about the fact that Trump suddenly had a direct phone line to Moscow.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I was more worried about the fact that he, had access to the big red button.
oh yeah, no, absolutely the big red button, but also the red phone of one day there's going to be an international incident. Trump's going to pick up the phone to Putin and say something, and we are all going to die in a nuclear mushroom cloud. Like, that was a genuine fear. We didn't have that fear with Obama. We didn't even really have that fear with George Bush. Like, did we worry that George Bush was going to mix his words up mid-sentence halfway through a speech? Absolutely. But that was
Also,
funny, and it was amusing.
Just spaghetti is fine.
Thank you, spaghetti. Appreciate it. Yeah, my German's terrible. I apologize. But, it's... When last was... Before Trump, when was there a president that you genuinely thought, oh shit, this fucker's going to destroy the world? When was there even a presidential candidate that you looked at and said, this fucker's going to destroy the world? And like, that's what this movie does for me. Like, going back 1996, 25 years or so, more than 25 years now, but we are not just in the darkest timeline. We are in the only timeline where we've allowed it to become acceptable that our politicians might destroy all of us.
Yeah. Or, talking about lines that hit very much differently nowadays. About how, the line where President Whitmore is being, chastised by his aide for being, for focusing too much on compromise and politics. No, on politics and compromise, and not sticking to his, and giving too much ground. And we've seen where not allowing any kind of compromise gets us with how the GOP is destroying itself right now.
Yes, but in 1997, the idea of compromising with the fringes was the bigger danger. Whereas now the fringes are going, nope, you're with us or you're not. There is no compromise. But it's... For me, I think it's the idea of the last president who really, genuinely could possibly have done anything resembling compromise was Obama in his first term. The problem was with Obama, and this sticks in my core as I say it, I hear what I'm saying, folks. Obama didn't have the backbone to follow through on his promises. Obama did not have the balls to stand up to the Republican Party and say, no, fuck you, I don't care that I'm a black man, these are my policies, these are what my people voted for, and this is what I'm going to do. And if he'd have done that, things would have been very different, because he would not have allowed the fringe right wing in America, the racist right wing in America, to grow unchecked. Because he'd have put a stop to that shit.
We lost 1,000 seats under Obama. In lower legislatures.
He was too busy trying to placate the Republican Party when he should have been telling them, sit the fuck down and do as you're told. I'm the one who got elected.
It's like, I have a super majority. I promise single-payer health care. Instead of coming to the table saying that's what I'm going to do and maybe compromising to a public option. I'm just going to start with a public option. And like fucking Obamacare, Obamacare is Romney care. Like in Massachusetts, when Romney was governor, he instituted essentially the precursor to Obamacare, where you made sure everybody had health insurance and everybody was required and you'd pay a fine if you weren't insured. And so the individual mandate system, that was already the Republicans' plan. Like that was already the right-wing plan. So when they're like, oh, we need to repeal and replace it with what? That was you guys' idea.
Yeah, they just didn't want a black man's name on it. Let's be clear here. That was the point. Like, if Romney had been elected, that would have absolutely gone through and would still exist and would not be a political battleground now. Because it would have been Romney care, and it would have been, oh, look at us Republicans, look what we've done for the people. Not what it turned out to be.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can't even satirize. Like, I can't even say in a snide tone what the Republican point of view is on issues like that, because it can very easily be taken out of context and it's heinous.
Yeah.
And it's this really weird, like, this movie, first and foremost, right? This movie still believes in the American dream. Still believes in the American ideal. This movie makes a point of putting a camera on the Statue of Liberty multiple times. This movie makes a point of having Jews and Muslims and Arabs and black people and white people and Christians all working together for one goal.
Give me your tired, poor, and huddled masses, you know? Like,
exactly.
But we don't have that anymore.
This movie has, like, the stereotypical, like, Jewish man who needs to call his mother because the world's ending. And it has, you know, the Jewish man who hasn't prayed since his wife died. And it has Arabs. And it has, you know, it has all of these things. Because it still, in 1996, still believed in an America. It still believed in the King dream. But not in the right wing, oh, Martin Luther King said, let's not judge people by the colour of their skin. Like, not in the way it's been co-opted. It still genuinely believed that in the not too distant future, there would be an America where it genuinely did not fucking matter. Where if you were a black man or a white man or a Jew or a Christian or a Muslim, you stood every chance and were just as likely, if you put the work in, to make it to the highest office in the land. Like, and that was the dream. That was the dream. That was the dream America sold internationally. And that's the dream that this movie's selling. If you tried to release this movie now, like, even I looked at it and I was like, the only reason I don't have a massive word vomit spiel of negativity about this movie is because I'm viewing it in its context of this shit was released in 1997.
Yeah.
Because if you release this movie now, people would laugh it out of the theaters.
I mean, if I remember right, the reboot, or not the reboot, the sequel bombed bad at the box office.
This movie has the same problem Pride had when we watched it a few weeks ago. It's of a time where the future we could see at that time no longer exists. And that's heartbreaking.
But yet the optimism still hits the same way.
Yeah, it still hits the same way because you want to believe. Like, we all want to believe in the American dream of equality and justice and liberty. Like, we all want to believe in that. And, like, coming together as a planet and defending ourselves against all comers, and language, colour, creed no longer mattering because we're all in this together. But how many of us actually still believe that?
Or The
I don't.
American, the Americans have a plan about bloody time.
Yeah, exactly. The Americans have a plan about. I wouldn't be waiting for the Americans to have a plan in 2023.
Yeah.
Like, why are the Brits waiting for the Americans to have a plan? It's your special relationship for you. Tony Blair put us on our knees to. Don't. I'm not going there. I'm not going there. But in 1997, the whole world, if something like that had happened, would have looked to America for what to do next. Come on, you're the leader of the free world. What's the plan? Like, take me to your leader in 1997. The answer was, I don't have access to the White House. You've landed in the wrong country if you were in the UK. Like, and we understood that. We understood, in Britain especially, we understood that America was the leader of the free world.
Yeah.
Like, regardless of what was going on internally, America stood at the head as the leader of the free world. And in that little group was America, Germany, Britain, possibly France, although they were mostly riding coattails in the late 90s. Like, communism had collapsed. America was victorious. America was going to be the leader.
Well, and you know, it's telling that in the first wave of attacks, America's the only country who has 3 cities targeted.
Yeah. Oh dear God, scummer. I just broke out in a cold sweat. Oh dear God. Oh my gosh. Someone call Maggie Thatcher, see if she's available and she can do anything. Can you imagine if aliens invaded when Liz Truss was president? Oh my God. Sorry, I'm having I'm looking off into the distance and I can see the fires of Vietnam.
So anyway, speaking of the fires of Vietnam, I think that's a good way segue into our pilot friend.
Cheers, bud.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, and like he's. I need Americans to understand, right? The way America's shown in this movie is not unusual.
Yeah.
Like, it's colourful, it's saturated, there's a lot of rich poor going on, but you know, that's what America looks like in this movie.
Yeah.
But before I went to America, I had this image of America in my head that was mostly from movies. Like, if I'd have landed and the people were yellow, it would not have surprised me too much because I'd seen The Simpsons. Like, and I was an undergraduate studying American studies, so I knew American culture and things. I was not, you know, I was better informed than the average person.
Yeah.
But I was shocked by how much of an accurate depiction of America and what America looks like that this movie was. Like, and I'm sure Ring can tell the story better than I can, but when I landed in the US, like we've all seen on movies, right, where they go around the suburbs of a city or a town and every house has got a flag outside.
Yeah.
We thought that was for Hollywood. We thought that was for the cameras. I never thought there'd be a country where the people actually flew flags outside their front door every day.
To be fair,
you did take me to a military town, but
yeah.
Like, even when we weren't in military towns, there were still way more flags than you can get away with and not be called racist in England.
Well, but part of it is that, you know, indoctrination from early childhood. Like in our elementary schools, like K through 12, every morning we would start with standing at our desks, hand to our hearts, as they said the Pledge of Allegiance, you know, to the flag that was in the classroom. Like, it's some real North Korea shit.
Yeah.
Like, to me, that's so, like, that sends a shiver up my spine now. Like,
Oh,
I learned how to do the pledge in sign language. And I still remember it, even 30 years later.
Oh
Yeah,
gosh, yeah, no, I was
you went
raised
to a
Catholic.
public school.
I
Yeah.
did go to a public school.
Every morning from second, through every school morning from second to eighth grade. Not only did we pledge to the American flag, we also pledged to the Christian flag and to the Bible.
That's horrifying.
It's just
Yeah.
horrifying. Like, I was raised Catholic. Catholics worldwide come together at midday local time and pray the Angelus. And that was weird enough. Like, or having to say morning, lunchtime, after lunchtime, and end of day prayers.
Yeah.
And like the prayers were always like vaguely threatening. Like I remember the afternoon prayer in primary school. It was like, it was very sort of guard me until morning light kind of nonsense. Like,
Yeah, if I die before I wake.
yeah, it is very kind of, not quite if I die before I wake, but close enough. And that she's dark to put on kids. Like I growing up with that, like singing songs like Christ the Redeemer, which is a Catholic hymn if you've ever heard it. Or Do Not Be Afraid, or Colours, like we were played Shine Jesus Shine. We were taught to do the hand signals for Shine Jesus Shine.
Oh wow.
And then you
have I just clocked into a memory for you? Shine Jesus Shine.
Excuse me while I have flashbacks, but you were saying about America.
Yeah, but like all of that, like there were certain things that when you watch movies, you don't think they are a one-to-one representation of real life. No one does, right? And even to an extent, people watching us here, we're not exactly here as we are normally. Like there's an element of, we're putting on a show, I'm toning my accent down. Things like that. So you're seeing the truth of us, but you're not necessarily seeing the off-camera us.
It's like putting a little coat of makeup on, like this is still my face. I just made it look a little bit nicer, like with my black and white winged liner.
Yeah,
and a little lip.
And like my lipstick and
yeah.
And it's like I don't actually have purple lips, folks. But
this is like a My Lip but better. Like it's just a little bit richer in color, but it is very close to my natural lip color. So
oh god, no, my natural lip color, I look like I don't have lips. So yeah.
Yeah, I was blessed with the DSLs that are like nice and like peachy colored. So
I don't have that. But what I'm getting at is when we saw America on screen, right? When we saw The Simpsons, or we saw Friends, or we saw, what else was big in the 90s? Like when we saw Everybody Loves Raymond, although that was a little bit later. Even later stuff, like when we saw The Big Bang Theory or How I Met Your Mother, like later on in the 2000s. We looked at that and we were like, that's got to be a set somewhere, right? Like that can't be real. That can't be based on a reality. Because it's just, there's something not real about it. Like it seems like the idea, like in this movie, there's a kid in this movie in an RV banging the side of a wooden box TV that has knobs on the front in 1996. Look, I'm not being funny, but I'm not being funny, but the rest of the world had TV remotes by then.
Yeah.
But I mean, like that comes down to just poverty and like trailer parks. People don't live in trailer parks because they want to.
But this is the thing. I was raised in poverty, Kitty. I was raised on the welfare state. We had TVs that had remotes. We had a working car. We were clean. We had, there were certain things we had that when we saw things on TV about America, we were like, well, that can't be real. Because, and it's that line that I quoted from Top Gear earlier. It's like, because there's no way the leader of the free world would allow its citizens to live like that.
But they will, because like for decades the poor have been demonized and scapegoated as well. You know, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps. It's your fault if you
Yeah.
are in poverty, and we're not going to give any entitlements or handouts.
Yeah, but this is the thing, right? America is so, like, the architecture is so brutal. It is. It's a brutalist nightmare, some of the architecture, especially in the South in America where we drove through. Like, it's all just square. Everything's built out of concrete and it's just square.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have terraced houses. Your houses don't have, like, back-to-back gardens. Like, even your windows are weird. Like, your toilets are too short and your baths are too short. And, like, just this weird stuff in American architecture that I just sort of look at and I'm like, so American. The idea of having a post box at the end of the garden because your postman's too fucking lazy to walk 6 steps to your front door. That's just weird to me. It's just so fucking weird. Like, in England, the postman, and I'm sure Scummer will back me up in the comments on this, comes through your gate, walks to your front door, and there's a flap in your front door that the letters go through. And if he has a parcel for you, he fucking knocks. Occasionally he knocks and then runs, so you don't get your parcel and you have to go to the collection office. I'm sure Scummer's never done that. But
That
you know,
actually changed a bit when I was a kid. We used to have mailboxes by our front doors. Like it was like mounted, and it was like little metal with like a slanted roof. But then they basically changed it, and the mail carriers used to walk the neighborhoods, but then they got the mail trucks. And so everybody was then required to put their mailboxes at the end of the driveway so that the person could just drive through and go mail, like, and drop the mail off.
I don't know about anywhere else in England, but where I'm from, if you've got a little wooden box outside your front door and you live in a house and like it's attached to your door, you're posh. That's a posh person's thing. And like, the idea of your postman driving from house to house, that's 3 steps, bud. That's 3 steps. You drive to the end of the street and you can do 10 houses.
Like we had a neighbor that was a postal worker, and like he used to have like insanely like strong calves. Like you could see the muscles from a mile away. And then they changed the way things were done, and everybody put in their post boxes, so it's just they'll drive up one side of the street and then turn around and go up the other side of the street.
Yeah,
And
but it's like, and I get it, America's so much bigger and, you know, your houses are bigger as a result, so are your gardens. But still, right, even the way your streets are laid out is weird. And like, everything's this weird concrete color. Like, it's just weird. Everything's this weird concrete color. And it's like, it's so hard to explain why that's weird to me. Like, even your industrial, like, you have like an entire city street and you'll have stores on the block with a giant ass car park, right? We have something similar in the UK that we call retail. They're usually like industrial sites that have been converted into retail stores. But they're not like that.
well,
They're
there's
not
also
like,
the
they're just,
difference between
I
like the South
can't.
and the North. Like things are different, but it is funny that you bring it up. Like everything's like that concrete color, and like one of the terrible, like scary stories they say is, oh, like there's no individuality in communism, and everybody will be living in like concrete like ghettos, and it's like,
Well, it genuinely. I landed in America, right? And I appreciate that I landed in Tennessee and I landed in a military town. But it felt like I'd stepped back to it. Like, I half expected Del Boy to drive around the corner in his Reliant Robin. That's how far back in time it felt like I'd stepped back. Like 1970s, that's what it looked like. It had that grayness of the 1970s. Like, it was just, it's so weird to me. and it confuses me, and I'm sure I will go through the whole culture shock again when I go over there next time. But like, it's this, and then you've got within all of this, right? So you've got this bleak landscape that no one outside of America believes is actually real. And then you put these characters in it who are like, this movie is really very good, and I'm going to pull that pin out that I put in early on now. Is very good at making me patriotic for a country that A, I don't live in, and B, I don't necessarily think has much to be bragging about.
Yeah.
And that's odd to me. Like, for me, landing in America, it's a bit like, I've read descriptions of people who crossed the Berlin Wall right after it came down, and they walked into East Germany, and they were like, it's like going back 30 years, 40 years. So it's like for me going from Britain to America, to that part of America that we were in last time. And it's like, we drove across the center of America. We drove across the Midwest.
Yeah, from Tennessee to Montana.
Yeah. And we stopped at various points along the way. And the most modern, or the most familiar place on that journey for me, like the place that was most similar to Europe or Britain, was a tourist attraction in the middle of the Badlands. Like, because it had some colour and there was a bit of variation in the buildings, and it wasn't, you know, I'm talking about Wardrobe for anyone who doesn't know. That was the closest you got to like American, like America looking vaguely modern. And that was literally selling itself on the basis that it was a tourist attraction for something from 100 years ago.
That is just the Google link of my hometown in Massachusetts. And if you click on it, like it shows, you can click through a couple of pictures and you can see that it is, the North does it different than the South.
Oh yeah, no, that looks very, that could pass for any British town. Like that could pass for Leeds. But
the North does it better.
Yeah, but what I'm getting at is South Dakota is not exactly the South. Like it's not the North by any stretch, but it's not.
No, but it's the Midwest, and that is a whole different animal because you've got the East Coast and the West Coast, then you've got the Midwest. On the West Coast, when the closer you get to the ocean, the more like
English
socially evolved. Like I'm trying to find a way to put it delicately, because it's like California, Washington State, Oregon, like they're all pretty progressive, like blue state areas. And then you've got New England, which New England, like there's a lot of it was carbon copy. Like, I mean, there's a Leicester. Like I have family in Leicester and Spencer, and I'm from Worcester. So
I was about to say, how do you pronounce the name of your hometown?
Worcester.
Okay,
it's Worcester, Massachusetts.
I'll allow it.
Well, we don't have Shire at the end, but Worcestershire would be how we would say the sauce because it's the name of the town. But no, there's a Spencer, there's a Leicester, and Leicester it's Leicester. Like it's spelled the same as England's Leicester.
It looks nothing like England's Leicester, just for the record.
No, but it's spelled the same way. But so you have the Northeast, and then you have the West Coast, and they're similar in their liberal values and such. Then you have the South, especially the Bible Belt. Florida is its own separate thing, and I'll come back to that. Because essentially from the Mason-Dixon line, which is basically where you can tell you've reached the North when they stop having sweet tea. Because in the North it is unsweet tea, and then you have to sweeten it yourself. And that's about the Mason-Dixon line.
Can I just point something out? Like I'm looking at images on Google of Leicester now. I just literally type Leicester, Massachusetts into Google, right?
Yeah.
it looks like it was built in like the 1880s and then not touched again until a British council came in the 1960s and threw up a load of prefab houses. That's
Yeah.
what it looks like, folks.
Yeah. Yeah.
It does not look like it genuinely, like, I'm looking at buildings here that I think Del Boy would turn his nose up at living in.
Yeah.
And he lived on the Nelson Mandela house in friggin'
maybe we should get back to the movie.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But yeah, sorry. The reason I say that, right, is because it is just it looks foreign to me.
Yeah.
And it's very hard for me to pin down where that foreignness comes from. But I think a lot of it is that a lot of these towns were built and then just left like that.
Well, I think part of it
Which is not a problem, but in Britain what you find is you get towns from the 1800s that bits have been ripped down and skyscrapers have been thrown up in the middle, and like half of it's built out of glass now, and there'll be random concrete stuff from the 50s, and it's this big mishmash of stuff. Whereas in America, towns seem to have an actual, like, you can probably date a town by walking around it for 5 minutes. Can't necessarily do that in Britain.
Yeah.
Well, because like there was a lot of expansionism, that happened, and a lot of towns it's like, okay, we've got this land, and then they just build it up, like, and the fact of the matter is, I think like the basic sentiment like might come down to, in other areas of the world, the United States is put on a pedestal that we are the land of milk and honey, the streets are paved with gold, the shining city on the hill. But then when you get there and you see that it is just as bad, if not worse, in some areas as where you come from outside the United States, it's a bit of a shock to the system, because it's like, well, they're supposed to be the ones up here, but like, fuck, my town looks nicer than this, or
exactly.
our poors are taken care of better than this.
I mean, yeah, I'm from Bradford. And I went to America in 2014 and looked around and went, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck? I'm not from a particularly rich town. I'm not from a particularly well-to-do town. But, wow. And like I said, I saw the whole Midwest. Wow.
Yeah.
So just based on one day, I was just like, why don't you people have sloping roofs on your buildings? Someone explain this to me. Like, someone who understands American architecture, explain this. Like, in Britain, most houses have a sloping roof of some description, right? Most buildings I saw in America, like buildings people live in, unless they are like those little dinky, little house on the prairie style houses, have flat roofs.
It comes down to the area you're in. Like where I am, we get a lot of rain and hurricanes. We have slanted roofs. Where I'm from in Massachusetts, we get a lot of snow, so slanted roofs because, the weather thing. Whereas in the Midwest, you have tornadoes that'll rip through and tear everything apart. So like with a flat roof, it's, maybe easier to replace it when it gets ripped off by a random storm, I guess. Like if I had to guess on that.
I knew there would be a reason for that, but folks, the kind of building I'm describing in America, if you imagine a council flat, like a block of 3 council flats built in like the 80s, red brick with the white window frames, like where everyone had a communal staircase leading up and there was a flat behind every door, like that kind of building, that's what I'm describing in Britain. Like, that's the comparable thing in Britain. And I've lived in a place like that. They're not bad at all. I have nothing against them. But I was just like, they are not how the majority of houses are built in the UK. But then the UK's a tiny, rainy little island that stops when the wrong kind of snow lands on the railway tracks. So, I'm not saying it's better. I'm pointing out the differences. Because you've given me the answer, and Spaghetti gave me the answer in the chat as well. It's snow versus hurricanes. But me going to America, not knowing that fact, and then looking at these buildings that look like buildings that I know in Britain were built in the 50s, 60s, and 70s? Do you see why foreigners come to your country and look at it and say, this is so backward? This looks so backward compared to what I'm used to.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily because it is. In a way it is, but in a way it's more about where it's been. Like if I went to North Africa and the buildings had flat roofs, I'd be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. There doesn't snow here. But in Britain, if a building's got a flat roof, probably built in the 70s, it's probably a prefab. Like, it was thrown up cheaply to house people cheaply, and it's cheap. Like, that's what it's for. And again, it's that thing of there's certain things in American architecture and the way America looks that to outsiders looking in, it looks cheap and nasty and like it was thrown up in a hurry. And that's what, like, the reason I'm talking about all of this is I need you to understand, as much as I love Ring, I have no real affinity for America.
Yeah.
Like, not for the reality of America. And I know the reality of America. So let's talk about the fact that this movie makes me cry and makes me want to support America.
Yeah.
Because that's a really important thing this movie does. And it's a really interesting discussion to have about how propaganda, even when you know it's propaganda, even when you know what it's designed to do, even when you know it's lies, still fucks you up and gets the tears running. Like,
I wouldn't say Independence Day is lies. I would say that Roland Emmerich is trying to sell a dream.
it's a dream. It's a very naive dream. Let's be charitable. It's a naive dream. Yeah, I'll grant that. It's naive. It's a dream. It's not necessarily 100% true, but you know, it is what it is. And so, why do I, having grasped that this president is a Republican, a right winger, a white guy, ex-military, probably privately educated, like he's clearly like Yale or Princeton or Harvard or somewhere like that, clearly, like,
or considering he was a fighter pilot in the Gulf War and is probably in his mid-30s, because that's the youngest you can be and be eligible for the presidency. I'm probably going to say West Point.
West Point possibly as well, yeah, as an officer.
Yeah.
He's clearly like, he's military. He's not. He's as an outsider looking in. Again, I look at that character, and I understand that the person who designed that character wants me to think of Kennedy.
Yeah.
Wants me to think, this man is ask not what your country can do for you. And for some reason, I'm not American, but America is my country when he asks that question.
Yeah.
Because it makes it feel like, the vanguard for the free world,
Yes.
like, and that they're the last bastion protecting the common folk.
Yes,
and because that speech isn't, I mean, yes, that speech is about, Wilsonian American exceptionalism, but it's also about the world coming together in the face of a common threat, because, he says the 4th of July will no longer be an American holiday.
Yeah. It will be a holiday for all of mankind. And to me, that's a very socialist ideal. The idea of, there's a reason workers around the world celebrate May Day. Like, that's the closest thing we have to that in reality. It's probably May Day, like the Workers' Day. But, like, this right-wing, Christian, white, male, we assume cisgender and straight.
Yeah.
Person quoting frigging, I can never pronounce the name of the speech. We shall not go quietly into that good night.
Yeah.
Like, drawing from Christian imagery and Christian speeches to make a speech to the military. Why am I, as a mixed race, non-cis, non-straight, bleeding heart liberal lefty who doesn't like the military or anything it stands for, and doesn't like nationalism and thinks patriotism is not how most countries do it? Why am I tearing up at that? And it's a really, like, it's so interesting. He climbs up on the truck, but he's always presented as an everyman. Like, he never wears a tie.
Yeah.
He's an everyman.
Because
he's a regular Joe. He's a family man.
When it comes down to it, it is that illusion of the dream that kind of pulls you. It's tugging on the same place in your heart strings that, like, the ending scene of John Q does, where it's like, even if you don't have a kid of your own, like, everybody has somebody that they would lay down their life for, where it's like, oh, you don't have a heart for my kid? Okay, cool. I will blow my brains out and you can take mine. Save him. You know, like,
oh, the final scene of Saving Private Ryan, or the final scene of Pride. It's all this, earn it, honor, victory, sacrifice. But
we all have people we'd be willing to die to protect.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, I know what I stand for, right? And you've all seen me talking streams about know what you stand for, and I've done that. But I don't glorify the military.
Yeah.
Like, I think if you want to big up your military, why don't you look after your soldiers? Why have you, like, you do not get to brag about your military while you've got veterans who are alcoholics, shunned by society, and ranting and raving that they've been abducted by aliens and no one's given them a psych evaluation yet. Like, those two things should be mutually exclusive. Like, if you're going to have a military, you should look after your soldiers. Like, that's my point on that, right? But there's something about that speech and the way it's put together, and it's really interesting because he takes on the same tone of voice, the same cadence. If you've ever been to, and I know you both have, a religious service.
Yeah.
You know, when the preacher starts and, like, you sit back in your chair because you know all the aunties are going to be there with the fans waving, praising Jesus. Like, that's that tone he takes on.
Yeah.
And then you get the music that swells behind it. Like, your emotions are being manipulated by that scene. Like, your emotions are being 100%, like, you are not in control of your emotions watching that scene. And it's designed that way deliberately. And that's why I think it's so important that we dissect that, because, first of all, the darkness behind him, the night, the stars in the sky, like, this is the last chance hurrah.
Yeah.
And he stands up and he almost says, the comment he passes of, some of them look really young.
Yeah.
And they look nervous. And he knows, like, as the president, he knows, like, there are certain points in history where you've got to do something for morale. Like, him standing up and making that speech is, when we watched Pride, is Mark standing up and promising something big in the Miners' Hall.
Yeah.
It's that moment of, I have to say something because no one else will, and if I don't, this is not gonna work. And that's what it's tapping into. And it's not necessarily a bad thing when people do that throughout history.
And
like, there's a reason generals study oratory, like, and politicians study oration.
And it's also, the culmination of his character arc.
Yeah. And it's this idea that it's spontaneous, that it's honest, it's heartfelt. And the way the camera moves and the shots we get of people all around the world as he's saying it, it draws everyone in. And that's why, as a foreigner, I can sit and look at that, and as I'm watching that scene, I'm crying for America and for the beauty of the American flag and the American dream. Because that's not what I'm crying for. What I'm crying for is I've been given this image of world peace, unity, the culmination of the dream, the American dream, King's dream, all the dreams, the socialist dream, the every dream, and it draws in everyone, no matter what your politics are, because what it says is your politics no longer matter. What matters is we're all on the same side here.
Because, like, you could see the through line from the end of Independence Day to the start of, like, the United Federation of Planets, like, and Star Trek, where it's like, okay, like, the world, we've got our shit sorted, like, we've worked out all of our internal squabbles. Now we're going to, essentially make, a one world, like, government where it's like the entirety of Earth, everybody has, we're all one tribe, because there are other tribes out there that we might need to defend against.
Look, people don't want to admit it, okay, but as early as the 1950s, when they were creating the European Union, the final goal of the European Union was a United States of Europe. Not everyone's goal who was part of it, but several people made the stated goal a United States of Europe, a united single government of Europe, and all the countries therein, like America has, with each country being its own state answering to a federal government. They put it in Brussels for some reason. But, like, that was the goal. And, in a time where you've got holy shit Russia and holy shit America on both sides, I can absolutely understand why that's the goal. But there are problems with that, right? And that's what this movie does. This movie shows the moment where humanity's priorities shift. Like, how much of your problems in your life would not matter if an alien suddenly appeared in the sky? Like, how much of your petty little life would become utterly irrelevant to everything else if aliens invaded or someone told you there were only 5 minutes to live? Like, how much, like, it resets your priorities. That's what this movie does. It tells Americans, we don't care if you're black, white, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Arab. We don't care if you're, like, if aliens arrive, do you really think Israel still gives a shit about, like, taking over Palestine?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean,
that is specifically what this movie is saying, because it shows that image. Like, do you really think
in the fantasy or, like, in reality? Because considering the Zionist governments, like,
but
the hardliners would still say, I don't care.
But this is the thing. It reshapes your priorities as the audience. Then it offers you an idealized version of what you would do in that moment.
Yeah.
There's enough hope and realism sprinkled in that it makes it's like a hit of a drug.
It is. And it's nostalgia for a time that never existed. But it's also like, this movie hits different post-COVID for me.
Yeah.
Like, as much as I this morning I watched that movie and I cried at that speech and I cried at the end of this movie, because the music got to me and the speech got to me and the fireworks got to me and the kissing and all of it got to me. And I'm a softie. I cry at all kinds of movies, folks.
Yeah.
This movie hits different because this movie is no longer a representation of the hope we all have that America will lead the way and that the world will unite in the face of an external threat. This movie hits different because now I look at this movie and I go, I wish I still had that hope. I wish I was still that naive. Like, again, it's like Pride, right? It's like when we watched Pride and we said this movie hits different in 2023 because we no longer have the hope we had in 2014.
Yeah.
Like, that's what this movie does. This movie shows us a version of ourselves that never existed or did exist, but only existed in our minds and in our hearts and in our hopes and dreams. And it's a really interesting thing to look back on things that do that after 10, 20 years. It's like watching old sci-fi, right? It's like, what did we value that like just doesn't gel now, like wouldn't work now? What was weird? What's weird to us that they thought that that's how things were going to go?
Yeah.
And like you can talk about the technology didn't go that way, or we went into touch screens rather than lasers or whatever. But I'm talking about the deeper things.
The interpersonal things.
Yeah. The interpersonal things, the political things, the social things. The things that make you human, right? Because humanity for me is bound up in concepts of hope and optimism. Like, the glory of Rome was not that it was brilliant and built from marble and stone. It's that generation after generation after generation of people who knew they were never going to live to see it in its heyday and at its height worked towards that goal. Like, was it the best goal? No. Was it vaguely fascist and very imperialistic? Absolutely. But it was a goal. And it was a dream. And we've all seen Gladiator and we've all seen him talk about how Rome is the dream. Right? And it's that. And America in 1997 was the dream. America was the dream in 1997.
Yeah.
There was hope. Like, you might have been about to elect an environmentalist. We were going into the 21st century. Phones were getting smaller. Technology was getting faster. Like, all these things were happening. The internet was just about appearing. There was hope. And that's what this movie gave us. It was hope. And when you look back on old media that has that, there's a temptation from our vantage point to call it naivety, right?
Yeah.
To say, how could we have ever been that naive? Look how daft we were. Look how blind we were to the faults of our governments. Look how innocent we were. Look how... And it's said with an air of pity, right?
Yeah.
Like, look how sweet and innocent we were that we thought the worst thing you could be as a president was Texan.
Like to compare, you have, this, President Whitmore's speech, and then, in 2001, you have the bridge scene from Spider-Man. You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. This is New York.
Yeah, and it's that same hope in people will come together and people will fight. But post-COVID, post-global war on terror, 12 years of, Iraq and Afghanistan, the internet and the way that changed and the Twitter culture and all of it, we look at it now and we're just tired and we're jaded and we look at those movies and we think, were you blind? Were you, like, what were you not seeing that we see? And the truth of the matter is, where we are historically was not inevitable.
Yeah.
It was not even preferable. We are in the worst timeline. Like, you've both said that to me. We are in the worst timeline. But we put ourselves here. as a collective, we put ourselves here. And the reason we look back at those old movies now and we think they were so naive, they were so innocent, is because we now know, right, that if something is threatening the planet, but the American government can get protection for its citizens, it ain't sharing with the rest of the world. We know that if the British government, you know, if something goes wrong and the British government's got the answer to fix it, they want pain before they'll share that shit with the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
The
we
death of
know.
altruism and concern for the species for the enrichment of the few, because that
know,
oligarchical
Yeah.
mindset has got
Like,
its
we know-
talons in.
Like, we know that that millions of people being killed unnecessarily every year by climate change is still not enough to get us off our asses and stop us relying on,
or you know, we know
like, coal and
that
oil.
the people the people on the surface wouldn't be brought into the bunker.
Yeah. Like, we know, like, we are in a timeline where if aliens arrived, could I actually put my differences with Trump supporters aside?
I've got it. I've got the comparison. We are in the darkest timeline, not the one where we end up with Independence Day and eventually the United Federation of Planets. We're in the Elysium timeline, where all the poor people are just rotting on the planet while the rich people have their shit up on the space station.
Pretty much, yeah. But, like, this is what I'm, like, hand on heart. If malevolent, violent aliens arrived above our planet tomorrow, would I be willing to set aside my differences with the people who voted for Boris Johnson? Or with the people who think Nigel Farage has got a point? Or with the MAGA hat wearing crowd in America? Or with people who support Putin? And we've cut in such a short space of time, 25 years, we've got to the point where, as a species, we are so divided.
Yeah.
I don't think I can hand on heart say if someone told me, like, if I got an emergency thing on my phone now of you're going to die in 3 minutes, I'm still not entirely sure my dad would be the person I'd go to ring.
Yeah. Or to make an analogy from another science fiction alternate history book. In the World War series by Harry Turtledove, where aliens invade during World War II, the Poles side with the aliens.
I mean, when your options are aliens or Nazis, I'm siding with the aliens.
Yeah.
Like, I'll take my chances on that.
Yeah, like Poland, the Jewish resistance, like, I think the Chinese too. Like,
well, considering what the Japanese were doing to the Chinese, like that tracks.
What
about Lithuanians?
Again, like, I mean, the Lithuanians sided with the Nazis when the Russians rolled in because the Nazis was something new that they didn't know the extent of. So I'm betting on the Lithuanians siding with the aliens.
Yeah.
Probably.
Like, that's my bet for that. The French probably just like... The French are just the French. I don't know what they'd do. But it's this thing of... There are genuinely certain people in the world who I would not trust to have my back in that situation. It's not even would I fight alongside them and is there a greater goal to attain here? It's, do I trust you?
Not to put a knife in my back.
Yeah, not to blow me. Like, say the Independence Day scenario. Do I trust you? if I'm a pilot, that you're not going to blow me out of the sky the minute I go ahead of you in the formation.
Yeah.
Being a queer, gender non-conforming, POC woman. Yeah, no, some of those MAGA
Like-
hat people would
Like-
absolutely fucking
So,
Do I trust that
blast
you are
you.
going to give a shit if I live or die in this situation?
like in an Independence Day scenario, and trigger warning, I'm just going to go ahead and put up a trigger warning. Trigger warning. Like in an Independence Day scenario, the evangelical right would definitely say that this is God's punishment and start lynching queers to appease him.
Yeah, the Pat Roberts crowd would definitely would be all, yeah, no, the aliens coming it's because of the queer people, just like
Yeah.
9/11. So yeah,
Yeah.
you're not wrong.
And it's like, if I can't trust you to stand with me when our entire existence is on the line, are we even the same species anymore?
Yeah.
Do we have anything in common anymore?
And like
And that's the problem, right? In 25 years, we've gone from we are one species, we will stand together, to I'm not sure I trust you not to blow me out the sky.
Yeah.
And like I have to wonder if it wasn't, like a similar mentality back in the lead up to World War II. Like, not to like Godwin's law of the stream or anything like that, but
I think we've already like swan dived over that line.
Yeah.
well, I'm just saying though, like where it's like you had people that you spent your whole life in the neighborhood living next to them, and then because of that mob mentality, you'll smash their businesses and kill them, or
kids
fucking
reporting their own parents to the SS and the Stasi, and and it's like, look, I've studied European history. Let me tell you something for nothing. If you go back to the early 1930s, before the rise of the National Socialist Party in Germany, right? Yeah. And you take the whole, you do a broad overview of Europe. If you asked me, where is a fascist dictator who wants to murder all the Jews going to rise, I would have said France, and then Russia, and then maybe Germany. Like, anti-Semitism didn't start or end with the Holocaust, folks.
Yeah.
Like, nationalism and racism wasn't invented by Hitler. They were always there.
And like I don't know who needs to hear this, but just because they called it a socialist party doesn't mean it was actually socialist. It's like calling American cheese cheese. It's a cheese product, but it's not actually cheese.
It's plastic.
Or
actually, it's gelatin. It has some cheese in it along with some gelatin and like milk. But yeah.
To quote, to pull a quote, we wouldn't have, oh, but I'm not Jewish, nobody's perfect.
Oh yeah, no, we would that was such a beautiful line in that movie. Like, because again, there's this culture, and I've told a few jokes in the past, and I've told these stories before, like, Jews have got a fantastic sense of humor, or at least the ones I know have. They've got a brilliant sense of humor. Like, you don't survive 5,500 years of like near constant persecution and not develop a decent sense of humor. Because how else do you survive that shit?
It's honestly because they have a similar sense, at least, the Jews I know, like the ones that come from up north, like nothing like a New York Jew to have a good, dark, gallows sense of humor. And that's why you appreciate it, because it's the dark. It's not just being like funny, haha. It's the dark, taking the piss, gallows humor.
It's like, I've genuinely got a friend who describes herself as Jewish. Like, She's Jewish on days where she doesn't fancy prawns in her Chinese food. Like, I went to her once and I was like, you know, you Jews, you have a lot of holidays. What the hell? And she said, they tried to kill us. They didn't, so we eat. And that was how she explained all the Jewish holidays to me. And I was raised Catholic, so that was new information to me. And she was like, and she said to me, like, all Jewish holidays, it's a Venn diagram. They tried to kill us. They did, or they didn't. So we eat. And it's like, if they killed us, we fast. If they didn't kill us, we eat. And I was like, that's brilliant. That's so hilarious.
That tracks.
But it's true. It tracks. And it's this. It's a great. I do think it's a cultural thing. Like, And you know, when I talk about my Jewish friends, I say I came to them as the recovering Catholic, asking terrible questions that I still need to apologize for because now I know better. But they were kind enough to meet me on my level because they knew.
Are
I
you
didn't
all
mean any malice by it.
vegetarian?
Yeah, like, do you really not eat bacon? Like, you know, or is it like what's with the whole mixed fabrics thing?
I was calling back to pride.
Yeah, but I've also asked that question of Jews, like, do you eat, like, I've genuinely, like, we had a Christmas, and I invited my Jewish friend to Christmas, and when she arrived, I went to offer her a drink, and I was like, what do you want to drink? Because it suddenly occurred to me that there might be Jewish rules about what alcohol they can drink. And she was like, just some wine will do. And I was like, okay, cool. Yeah. But I didn't know, but there was no malice intended. But they do have this sense of humor, and it's a sense, like, you've got Lithuanian family, Kitty, I've got Polish family and Jamaican family. It is a sense of humor that you only develop by being 90% sure that at some point in your life you are going to have to run for your life. Like,
and I've noticed like queer communities developing that same sense of humor because now, you know, rather than just being like sprinklings of queer people throughout the world, it's like we can actually congregate, maybe not in the same place, but online. So we're building that community, and we're getting that gallows dark humor where, you know, we'll make the off-color, you know, jokes to each other kind of thing, where someone on the outside looking in would be like, that's fucking dark, when it's really like, oh no, that's just a random Tuesday afternoon, you know?
It's like, you know, it's like boomers mistaking deep personal trauma for treasured childhood memories. Like, this is what's going on. And you know, being able to laugh at your own situation and your own ideas and your own culture is.
And the reason why you laugh is because the alternative is crying.
Yeah.
And laughter feels better than crying.
So
yeah, if I don't laugh, I'll cry.
Talking about.
No. Do you know what it is? If I don't laugh, I'll drink.
So.
And then cry.
Yeah.
So about deep personal trauma, maybe we should move the discussion to Russell.
Do you have to? I was having so much fun.
He is honestly one of my favorite characters in the film.
Yeah.
Like you can, but he's also a product of poverty and lifelong indoctrination, you know, as well. Like you can see the undercurrent of that in his character, but he's also a fucking hero, and I will not take that away from him, you know?
Yeah. But it's also like,
yeah, speaking of Russell and laughing as a gesture of defiance. Oh, hello, boys, I'm back.
Yeah, like the humor, the dark gallows humor.
Yeah.
Like,
that was one of my favorite lines in the entire fucking film.
Oh,
where he's basically just like, you know what? I'm on my way out. I'm going with a smile on my face, knowing I'm protecting my family, you know, and my species. And I'm also going to get some good old-fashioned revenge because, you know, you
Yeah.
fucking probed me. Well, I'll get you back.
Like,
Tenfold.
you can, like, you may kill me, but I'm taking you with me.
Yeah.
It's like, I will make sure that when you swallow me, I will choke your ass. I will cut you from the inside, and you're going down with me, fucker.
Yeah.
And that
Like,
that is inspirational, you know,
yeah,
where it's
like,
like, even if you know that you are about to meet certain demise, like, if you can go out knowing that, hey, not only are you gonna, like, the vindictive part of and petty part of I'm gonna
it's
fucking take you
going
with
down
me,
swinging, isn't it?
going down swinging, like, you're not like, rather die standing than like live on your knees kind of thing. And knowing that you're protecting the things that matter to you with that self-sacrifice, like,
Okay, but
absolutely fucking
yeah,
beautiful.
it is beautiful. Except that our value and the value we place on that as a concept and that idea goes back to the imperialism and the fascism of ancient Rome and the gladiators dying willingly in the arena
And
Oh, I'm not
the
saying
and
it does not have
whole
a dark
fastened with your
history.
shield or on it.
And that's why I said, like, there's that lifelong of
Yeah,
indoctrination that, like, this is something to strive for. But that aside, I still think that if I'm going to die, if I can do so protecting the people that matter to me, I would much
yeah.
rather a
But
warrior's death, like, lead me into
it's this thing of,
Valhalla,
yes,
you
it's
know?
no, it's this thing of what to you is a good death. And a good death in this movie is a sacrifice. It's the older protecting the younger. It's a sacrifice of one for the many.
yeah,
It's going down swinging. It's revenge to
cathartic
an extent.
revenge.
It's
Yeah.
cathartic revenge. It's if I'm going, I'm taking you with me, fucker. It's if I'm gonna go, I want one last cigar. And
Yeah.
all of that is very nationalistic, very like that has its roots in imperialism and I'll call it right wing propaganda, but I mean more like historical imperialism, like Sparta and Rome. Like that has
Even the
its roots in,
kamikazes
yeah, like
in
toxic
Japan.
masculinity, it just everywhere in this movie. Toxic masculinity, but also like what do you call a good death? Like the wife of the president dies in a hospital bed, bleeding internally.
Yeah.
But before she died, she got to hold her child one last time. And she got to say goodbye to her husband. And when her husband tried to lie to her and tell her it's going to be okay, and she called him a liar, she died
Yeah.
honestly, having held her child and made her peace with it. And she did her crying and she held her husband and she said her goodbyes. Is
Which
that any less of a good death than any of the other characters in this movie? Or is it
absolutely
just a
not.
different
Yeah.
Like,
kind of good
it's
death?
a different kind of good death. I would rather her death or Russell's death as opposed to, you know, somebody like dying of cancer. Like, I've lost family members to cancer. I've seen what it does to you. That is not a death that I want.
Oh, you know,
I
I'm like that with
absolutely not.
Alzheimer's. Like,
You know,
trigger warning,
no.
folks, but I
I
will say it bluntly.
I either
If
want to
so,
go peacefully, which I mean, even though she had trauma that led to the internal bleeding, her actual death, she
was
wasn't
peaceful.
writhing in agony. It was peaceful. She made her peace with it. She like you
You
said,
know
saw
they
her
gave her an
family.
extra shot of morphine to send her on her way.
Oh, absolutely. But you know what?
Like,
Like,
but it was a
of the
peaceful death. It
options,
was a
it's
good death, and
still
she got to say her goodbyes.
exactly. And I
Yeah.
would take
Yeah,
that or Russell's death of, you know what, it's gonna and Russell's death was quick. Like, he knew it was coming, but the actual death, like,
was
dying in an
instant
explosion like that is instant. You're not gonna feel it. Like, in fact, his death was more painless than, you know, the
than
president's wife's
hers.
death
Yeah,
because
Yeah.
but
she was in pain. There's no way you're dying of internal bleeding and you're not hurting, no matter how
like
much
this is the
morphine they
thing.
give you.
We talk about a good death, and you said it yourself there, Kitty. Like you'd rather go quickly than die of cancer. I'm the same way with Alzheimer's. Like I have flat told ring and trigger warning, folks, but I flat told ring because Alzheimer's does appear in my family lines. If I ever get diagnosed with Alzheimer's, I am going to blow myself away, or I am going to get on a plane to Switzerland because I don't want to live like that. I don't want to go that like that because I've seen how people like that go.
Yeah.
And that's my truth, because to me, that is not a good death. But why
Absolutely.
isn't it a good death to me? Like, why can I not make my peace with losing my mind and there not being anything left of me by the time my body stops?
That's
Why
it.
is that not a good death?
No, but that's what it is. Like when it comes down to it, sure, all of our bodies are different, but the thing that really makes us us is our minds. And like that is the core of your being. That is who you are. That is like for lack of a better term, that's your soul, your spirit, your consciousness, like what makes you you. And to lose that, and also as somebody, a fellow person who has experienced trauma in their life, like being out of control,
Yeah.
of that, where you can't control how fast you're going to slip, when you're going to have good days or bad, how bad it's going to be. Like there is a loss of control there that is
Okay,
terrifying.
but there's also, like, to bring it back to the movie, he makes that speech, he rouses them all, and then he goes and suits up to get in a plane. And he doesn't tell
Like
anyone
he's
he's going to
right
do it.
there with them, even though
He's
people are
right there
saying,
with
no,
them.
no, no, no,
And
you're the
this is
president, you can't.
like, this is the difference between a general and a leader, right? Like,
Yeah.
every general throughout history, if he's a man of the soldiers, if he's a soldier's general, it's because he led from the front.
Though
And again,
I will
there's a
say
certain sense of honor bound up in that.
I
Like
will
you said it yourself, a president should have military experience, because you shouldn't send people to die if you wouldn't have done it as well.
though I will
Like,
say in that situation he made the stupid fucking the really stupid fucking move.
yeah, he did, because he should have stayed back to make sure there was a government to
Yeah, because
be in
he
control
is
afterwards.
The
the
vice president was
only
gone,
yeah he
most
is
of the
the
cabinet was gone.
yeah he is the only survivor in the line of succession.
Yeah. Like, that was a stupid fucking move, but we applaud him for it, because we are so ingratiated in this mentality of everyone pitching, everyone do the job.
Yeah.
It's very
Like,
egalitarian and socialistic in the spirit of it, where it's like you have the fucking redneck ex-soldier with substance abuse issues,
and the
right there
president,
with the president, and they're
yeah,
both like giving their all in order
and they're
to
equals.
save everyone.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you've got a black Marine pilot,
volunteering.
Black Marine, pilot, and an MIT graduate cable repairman from New York, infiltrating the mothership.
The fucking
together.
burnt out gifted kid, the Jewish burnt out gifted kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly who he is. He's the burnt out gifted kid. Like,
The neurodivergent. I would bet my left ovary that he's like ADHD or autistic. Like he's neurospicy. Like
he's definitely I think he's closer to the autism spectrum than ADHD,
could be both.
but could be both.
¿Por qué no los
That's
dos?
a possibility. Yeah, that's a possibility. Like,
But definitely a
he's
burnt out
definitely
gifted
not
kid that's
neurotypical.
neurospicy.
Yeah.
Like, and you've got a black stripper and the lady president, the president's wife, together.
Yeah.
And they're just women, like.
And it's like there's this beautiful moment where she says, "I'm a dancer," and the president's wife says, "Oh, ballet." She's like, "No, exotic." And there's this moment between them, and then she comes to him and she's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." She's like, "Don't be, I'm not." And it's
because
that
there's
moment
that
where
mentality that people only do that because they
class
have
thing,
to,
yeah,
not because
but
they want
all
to.
Something
it strips them to the truth
focus
of
on
who
the
they are.
family.
Yeah. But it strips them to the truth of who they are, and it says, "No, I'm an exotic dancer, you're the president's wife, but we're both women. We're both just trying to survive and look after our children and our families.
Yeah.
And we both just want to get through this. We're human."
And it's
and that's what this movie does. Like, it presents people as stripped to their core. They will help each other. The problem is, looking at it now, 25 years later, do I believe that would happen?
You'll have the people.
I asked that question of, if a meteor crashed and you happened to be the person to find Ivanka under a rock, would you try and get her out?
I mean, honestly, I don't know that I could really help any billionaire. Like, when it comes down
Yeah, I
to
know,
it.
but I'm making an apples to apples comparison. But
No, I know,
yeah.
but
Like,
she would
if
count.
you found Elon Musk, if someone told you Elon Musk's in that burning building, burn fucker.
It's like I would
You know?
not. I will not call for the killing of billionaires. You know, like, and
But
I've seen people
I'm
that will,
not.
but I won't. But I do think that billionaires should not exist, i.e., we tax them out of existence, meaning, you know, you cannot become a billionaire anymore because of taxing. But when it comes down to it, those people that are current billionaires, I do not have much sympathy for them because you cannot be a good person and accumulate that kind of wealth. So
Also, like, does anyone remember that meme? You know,
something hashtag Team Orca.
No,
yes.
no. If you were in a room, if you had to choose between, you know, trolley problem of if you had to save Hitler or Stalin, what would you put in your sandwich? Like, that's the question, right? Like if you had to choose between Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg, like, do you want butter or lard in your sandwich?
So here's the question:
McDonald's or Burger King?
In the Zuckerberg Musk fight at the Coliseum, are they actually going to make it authentic and release the lions?
One can only hope.
Yeah, one can
However,
only hope.
apparently, Elon is chickening out. Like, because my money would be on Zuckerberg because he actually has done mixed martial arts and, like, he doesn't look it, but he's actually quite ripped. Whereas, like, fucking Elon's just a pudgy boomer, like, with an inferiority complex. Like,
I think he's Gen X, but yeah.
Boomer mentality.
Yeah. Boomer's not an age anymore, it's a mentality.
Yeah, I mean, he is a South African emerald mine heir.
Yeah. Boomer. But this is what I mean. Like, if someone said to you, you know, if
I had to pick, like, if making a sandwich was not an option and I had to pick between Stalin and Hitler.
Whoa. No. A sandwich is always an option because you can order from Subway.
I fucking love you, Sibby. I fucking love you.
No, but like, it's like everyone talks about the historic trolley problem, right? If you had time travel, would you go back and kill baby Hitler?
Yeah. But if Lenin was an option, I would save Lenin. Like, if it was,
I'd go back and I'd save. What was his name? Please hold.
I'm just saying, like, Lenin of like between fucking Stalin and Adolf and Lenin, he's definitely the lesser evil of the three.
I wouldn't necessarily kill baby Hitler, but I would make sure that Hitler got into art school.
Yeah.
And I would probably have somebody like just like hire an assassin or something, not to kill him, but to make sure he doesn't get bullied or anything. Like make him little bubble boy so that like he doesn't have anything to be mad about, you know, or like Eddie Izzard's I can't get the fucking trees. Damn, I will kill everyone in the world.
No, but like my historical, like,
I love her stand up.
If there was one historic person you would go back and either kill or save, I'd probably go back and save Bukharin.
Okay, so there are two types of boomers.
Like, if I had to choose from like an early Soviet person, I want Bukharin to take over after Lenin dies.
Yeah.
Like, that's how I want that to go, and I want the new economic policy to progress.
I agree
that's
with you
how
on
I want that to go. Like, fuck Kober and Trotsky and all the rest of it. I want Bukharin to.
Yeah, no, but I'm with Jeff. Like, he was no saint or anything, but he has definitely been judged very harshly.
Oh yeah.
Way too harsh, in my opinion. Like, I'm just saying, like, not perfect, but if it was like Hitler, Stalin, Lenin, I
Oh yeah,
I
I'm
would
saving
probably
Lenin.
save Lenin instead of making a sandwich, because
Yeah.
But
I mean, to be fair, what I'd do is I'd save Lenin, make the sandwich, then share it with him.
yeah,
The ideals of communism,
yeah.
remind him of what the ideals of communism actually are.
Good call.
But it's this thing of Hitler, like we've had this conversation multiple times on this channel.
Yeah.
Hitler was not the cause; he was the symptom, right? Trump
Yeah.
was not the cause; Trump was the symptom.
The way that I have always phrased it is Donald Trump is not the cause of the problems. He is the smelly, festering, gangrenous wound to let you know that you are not doing so hot. Like,
Yeah.
like
Trump's the fever, not the virus.
Yeah.
Or rather, Trump's the secondary infection taking advantage of the virus.
Yeah.
So like influenza killing an AIDS patient.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, my mum died of quote unquote ischemic heart disease. Would she have had that if she'd not had 25 years of diabetes and 8 years of kidney failure first?
Yeah.
Probably not.
Going to what Amiga Nuts said. Okay, so there's two types of boomers. There's, the baby boomers that were just born in that time, and then there's the boomer mentality. It's just like there are some lovely people named Karen, but that doesn't change the fact of the matter that, nobody wants to be a Karen.
Yeah, it's like boomer capital and boomer lowercase.
Yeah.
It's like boomer capital is middle-aged white guy who wants you to like give up your space in the line at the supermarket and, wants more guns and all that jazz.
The Venn diagram between Karens and boomer capitals is a circle.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Now, does the circle have a little spear coming out of the end or a little cross coming out of the end?
¿Por qué no los dos?
It can't have both because boomers say that there are only two sexes.
Yeah.
But if you are saying that one of them is like religious iconography and the other one is pointy stick for stabby killy, then you can probably make it work.
To be fair, if you gave the boomers the option between religious iconography or pointy stick for stabby killy, they're taking the pointy stick for stabby killy.
Yeah.
Oh, you definitely want to make sure that you get just the right aspect ratio so that you can get that like cinematography level, like art film.
Yes.
Like you want that to be like shown in art houses worldwide. Like maybe like some like fucking kitschy transitions to like really like pretentious art student film.
Yeah, like 1950s art house.
No, the real
4.5 hour movie with no talk.
The real question is, what music do you play on the background? I think I'm torn between My Heart Will Go On or Yakety Sax.
Another one bites the dust.
Ooh, Queen. Or musical montage where like you create a story with clips of music so that and then it leads up to the crescendo when the bubbles stop.
Nope. I've got the perfect no, wait, I've got the perfect song for watching Boris Johnson and Donald Trump drown. ABBA, give me money.
Yeah. Okay.
So
the sequel is Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg.
Oh man. That one would be hit me with your best shot, because like fucking both of them just I guarantee you they both have micro penises, and that has like shaped the entire course of their lives.
I shouldn't laugh, right? Because having a micro penis, it's a medical thing, and I genuinely I wouldn't bully anyone who had one, but I see the point. But again, it's that this is indicative of that culture we're talking about. Of we've all been fed this propaganda that a small penis is somehow less manly or less
Which is the opposite of
appropriate.
like ancient Greece and Rome, where if you had a
Mm.
third leg, you were considered stupid and undesirable, and small
Yeah,
penises were all the
you
rage
know,
back then.
yeah.
But again, and like I would never actually mock somebody with a actual micropenis diagnosis, but it comes down to it's that mindset. It's the same thing as
It's
like Boomer
small
and
dick energy.
Karen. It's the small dick energy where you are overcompensating and you become a nasty little fucking toad because
Oh yeah,
of
no,
it.
absolutely. Like Hitler had small dick energy. Yeah. Like I don't know if he only had one testicle, but I can believe
Like,
it.
we so basically we need the world to be run by, you know, shepherds, but it's run by chihuahuas. Like,
Yeah.
chihuahuas and Jack Russells.
Yes, but the problem is we elected the chihuahuas. That's the problem.
Because Trump is the Chihuahua.
Well,
Does that really figure
I'm saying like Zuckerberg and Musk are also, you know, chihuahuas or terriers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, they have Chihuahua energy.
Yeah, no, because Biden's not a chihuahua. Biden's, you know, those dogs that were like bred out in the 1800s that used to literally their entire life, their job was just to like walk on a wheel to turn spits for humans cooking pork and then sit on their feet to keep them warm. Like Biden.
Biden is a wet Nilla wafer.
Mm-hmm. But like again,
I would at
elect
least
these
give him
people.
banana pudding with Nilla wafers.
Ew.
It's an American thing. You basically make banana pudding and then you put Nilla wafers in it and then like
Oh no,
Cool
I'm
Whip
fully
on
aware
top.
of what it is. I'm imagining the sensory nightmare of that texture in my mouth.
Yeah, because the cookies get soggy. Well, you would call them biscuits, but they get like soggy.
Oh no, I know what wafer is. It's like the stuff ice cream cones are made from.
No,
not a
is
Nilla
different.
wafer. No.
Nilla wafers are more like a round, like you would call them biscuits, but they're basically like a vanilla cookie. And they have a pretty smooth, crumbly texture. And then you put them in there, and then they'll get kind of soft because they soak up moisture from the pudding.
Why would you put a biscuit into a?
It's an American thing, like especially in the
You can
South.
keep
Like
that.
banana pudding, it's a more Southern or Midwestern thing. Like
Yeah,
I think
no,
it might
you
have
can keep
started in the
that.
Midwest because, you know, like the whole Minnesota salads that aren't really salads, where you have marshmallow salad.
Oh yeah, no, but you can absolutely keep your vanilla banana pudding with random biscuits in it, and also your white gravy. You can keep that too.
The white gravy's good though. Like
Yeah, but it looks
sausage,
gross. It looks icky. It
it
looks like
does,
it's already
but
been
it's
eaten and
delicious.
regurgitated once.
For those Brits in the audience who don't know, that is a picture of Nilla wafers.
It's literally just a
They
vanilla
look like
biscuit.
fried dumplings.
Yeah, they're kind of flat. They're flat on the bottom, but then they are slightly domed at the top. And they're basically just a vanilla cookie / biscuit.
I'm going to like the biscuit. I have no problem with banana pudding. That's what I have. To be fair, I don't like custard either.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
Well,
a
if you're not
texture
a
thing.
custard person,
I don't like custard.
then yeah. But I mean, Ring will back me up on this one that, you know, like banana pudding and biscuits and such. Like, look, okay, so I understand that, Jeff, but I'm describing what happens to the cookies, and I'm trying to be inclusive of the Brits because you guys, cookie is not a thing. Like you would call
Oh
them
no, it is,
biscuit.
but it's American.
Yeah, but I'm saying like this it's basically just a simple vanilla biscuit.
But the way you're describing it as crumbly, I've got a mental image of something like a Madeira cake where it's almost a cake-like texture.
No,
No.
it's very crunchy.
Yeah.
Almost like
what like graham crackers?
It's a little bit softer than graham crackers, but not much.
Yeah.
Like rusks.
I don't think I've had those.
They're like a baby food thing. They're basically they've got the texture and taste of stale bread, toasted stale bread, or bread that's been toasted too much.
I mean, maybe somewhere between that and a graham cracker. Like
So-
Nilla
Do you know
wafers
what I'm
are
gonna do
something
when
we
I
give
get
to
to
babies.
America?
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I'm gonna do when I get to America? I'm gonna try all this shit that Americans have tried to describe to me and be like, was your description
Please.
accurate or not?
I need you to FaceTime me the first time you try a Nilla wafer.
So
Please.
the way I describe the texture of a Nilla wafer is probably like halfway between a graham cracker and a snickerdoodle.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you overdo your snickerdoodles.
So like not as hard as a graham cracker, but not as soft as a snickerdoodle. It just kind of like right in between.
Yeah.
Like a rusk, basically. Like toasted, like toast, but that's not burnt. Although the way Ring makes toast, maybe Ring doesn't understand the concept
Well,
of
I mean,
toast
it'd be
that's
a
not
little bit
burnt.
more crumbly than toast, but yeah.
Yeah. But, like, this, again, the reason I'm bringing all this up, like, it's a cultural thing, right? And there's this movie. Where did we even start on this discussion, right? But, like, the whole thing, we were talking about an honourable death, and how we went from an honourable death to what is a Nilla wafer.
That was my
so
fault.
we have this concept culturally of an honourable death, right?
Yes.
And that's been fed into by religions and cultures and history. And to everyone, an honourable death is something different. Like, to me, to some people, the worst thing they can imagine is being killed by a fascist dictatorship in any situation. Like, they would rather survive at all costs. And again, going back to the idea of Jews, because there are Jews in this movie, like, it's the Jewish tradition says survive, hide, survive, run, because you must keep, the goal is survival. Like, we're about saving lives, not so, like, this is about survival. And yeah, I think for a lot of us, if someone said to us, if our country is descended into a fascist dictatorship, touch wood, it doesn't happen for a bit. I say a bit as if it's possible, because it is. Another thing that's changed in 25 years. But, like, I think a lot of us, I think we can honestly say we sat and interrogated that and said, actually, no, I'd rather they killed me. I'd rather go down than live under a regime like that.
Yeah.
And that's because our conception of an honourable life and an honourable death is different to other people's. And it's not wrong, and it's not, they're not wrong either. It's just different. But, like, the Christian martyrdom, like, that, a massive reason why the white English-speaking world will hold up a sacrificial death, like a death is sacrificing for the greater good, is because that feeds straight back to Christian martyrdom.
Yeah.
Not just Christian martyrdom, though. Like, there's also, like, the
Christian
ties
martyrdom then feeds back to Roman gladiators and Sparta and the Spartan ideal and everything else. Like,
that falling in battle and going to Valhalla, like,
falling in battle. But it's the Christianity that is most dominant in our culture. And it's like, sometimes people don't want to always do the sensible thing. Like, the sensible thing was not for the president to get in a plane and lead that formation.
Yeah.
But if he hadn't have,
yeah, they needed it for morale, I think, honestly, because, like, the soldiers knowing, hey, my commander in chief is right here with me, even if I fall, like, in battle, like, my brothers and sisters are with me, my leader is with me, like, I am not being thrown away, I'm not being sacrificed for no reason.
It's culturally, like, famously, English kings on the battlefield took off his helmet in the middle of a battlefield and raised it so his soldiers could see that he was still alive.
Yeah.
That's from a Shakespeare play, but the point stands. That's what it's for. You read again Shakespeare. If you go read which one is it?
Or
Is it Henry the Fourth? There's a Henry play that's got a really good speech in it about death and dying in battle.
when Admiral, Yi died in the final showdown with the Japanese, his second in command and his son, didn't let everyone know, didn't let anyone know that he was dead until after the battle was over.
Look, we saw it last year, September last year. The Queen of England died at 2:00 in the afternoon. They didn't release that news officially until 6:30.
Yeah.
Because it was not a convenient time to release that information. And they needed those few hours to get shit in place. Because they understood that her dying was going to be a massive knock to the morale of a lot of British people.
Or, something, say what you want about Zelensky, but...
Say what you want about Zelensky, he stayed. He stayed and he led his people from the front.
His whole thing is nah, I don't need an evac, I need weapons.
Yeah. Like, Zelensky's probably the closest thing we have culturally to the president in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, he's the president making speeches, making himself out to be the next Churchill, asking for weapons and support and not leaving his men.
Green screens are fun.
Yeah. It's my little baby Yoda cup. So my little baby Yoda, but he's queer as fuck.
Yes, just to give credit where due, Scummer is right. The Henry speech I was talking about from Shakespeare is Henry V. It's the St. Crispin's Day speech.
Yeah.
Which I'm trying to find the wording of. Where's the wording of it?
I think Caesar had a reputation for fighting alongside his troops.
Yep, he did.
Most generals back then did, or most of the good ones did.
Yeah, like the generals went on the front line. Yeah, Caesar definitely had a reputation for it. It was a soldier's general. Like he fought with his men. Octavian, the same. Like Mark Antony, Mark Antony was very much the soldier's soldier. These men who they led it, and yes, they weren't necessarily right in the thick of the fighting, but they were there. Like, there's a reason Gladiator opens with the sun traveling to where the emperor is on the front lines of a war in Britannia, and that emperor is shown as virtuous and valorous.
Yeah.
Whereas his son, who is not willing to move with the soldiers and lead the soldiers with them, is not. Like, go back and watch Gladiator. It's right there, folks. Yeah.
So,
we few, we happy few, we band of brothers. For he today that shed his blood with me shall be my brother, be he ne'er so vile. Like, the idea of this bonds forged in war.
Yeah.
Be he ne'er so vile, this day shall gentle his condition, and gentlemen in England now abed shall think themselves accursed they were not here, and hold their manhoods cheap whilst any speaks that fought with us upon St. Crispin's Day. Like, I'm getting shivers just reading that. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Like,
we will not go gently into the night. We will not.
We are brothers.
Yeah. Fight.
It is, and it's that. And it almost deputizes everyone. does
Yeah.
that speech. Like, it deputizes every human being. It says, stand and fight, do not go quietly. Like, if you're gonna go swinging. Like, we rise and fall as one. And that's a really unifying idea. It's pure propaganda.
Yeah.
But it's a really unifying idea. You know, there's a reason, like, the meme goes round every couple of months these days. But the meme goes round of, you know, if you ever wondered what you'd do when Anne Frank came asking for help, look at what you're doing now. Like, those memes exist to deputize the populace. Those memes exist to make you stop and ask the question of, which side am I on? What am I willing to die for? What am I willing to fight for? What should I be running from? Like, we ask those questions in higher and lower all the time. And we ask them on Twitter, we ask them in memes, we ask them in movies and music. And, you know, when this came out in 96, Where Is the Love came out in what, 2005, the song?
Yeah.
And even in that short period of time, that sense of hope that this movie had been lost.
Yeah.
Like, in 2005, we looked around at ourselves and we went, oh, you know, what the hell? We already knew that we could not live up to our own idealized version of ourselves. And that's what this movie is, right? It's an idealized version of humanity.
Yeah.
And like the American dream, like Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, like and Bread and Roses, like the
I'd actually argue that it is the idealized version of humanity pitted against a demonized, the best of us pitted against the worst of us.
Like yeah, the aliens are, you know, they're similar to us. They live in biosuits and they are locusts that just like destroy a planet of natural resources and then move on. Like,
yeah,
that's,
you know,
not the aliens he's describing. That's us.
Yeah, you know, Whitmore asks, Whitmore makes the offer for peace, no peace. You know, he asks, what do you want? What do you want from us?
Die.
Like, I'll point something else out. It's an idealized thing, and I would say it's the, closest I've seen to what a post-racial, like, world would look like, because none of the people were actually looked down upon for their immutable characteristics. Like, even the president's wife, like, it wasn't that it was a black woman and she didn't have any discomfort from that. It was like just two women and maybe a little bit of classism, with the whole, oh, you're an exotic dancer, but she got over it real quick. It blindsided her a bit and then she was fine. So it's like, I would say it's the closest to an idealized, like, post-racial world where nobody was treated differently based on anything that they couldn't change,
Yeah, it's like in this world, okay, you had, like, again, I'm going to go back to the scene of they're up there and the father's that, and he starts to, the son leaves him with a prayer book, knowing that he, quote unquote, hasn't spoken to God since the son's mother died. Leaves him with a prayer book, says, just in case. Because that goes right. You can go back to our stream of God on Trial.
Yeah.
And see that same concept of when there is no hope, when God has abandoned you. Jewish tradition says, well, what do you do next? And it says, well, now you pray. Like,
and that's another thing. It wasn't pushed, and they weren't criticized for not having a belief. It was basically, here's an option for you, in
but it's
case.
like, it was inclusive in, you know, he sits there and he says, and he starts to pray and he says, everyone take hands. Like, everyone hold each other's hands. And he's calling all the different people to hold hands.
It was very
And then
egalitarian.
Yeah. And then the man says, I'm not Jewish. He says, nobody's perfect. But we're all human and we're all in this together. So we're all going to come together. And, you know, people in that little circle of people will have been praying to the Christian God, the Jewish God. There'll have been other people there praying to different things. The point was not that they prayed, or even the fact that they were at that point where they felt the need to pray. The point was that they came together to do it.
They were doing it together, regardless of who you're praying to. It wasn't that they were praying for an actual answer. It was more to take a moment to carve out a little bit of peace and comfort and solidarity with the human beings around them. It had nothing to do with the higher power. It very much had to do with human connection, because we are a social species, you know, at our core. And once you take away like the innate tribalism that we have and channel that on something else, everybody was coming together regardless of what like subsect of the human tribe they were from. It's like, no, we're all in this together. We're all one, you know, and it is that egalitarian equalizing oneness that was a beautiful sentiment.
Yeah, it no longer matters whether you're Jewish or not. It no longer matters whether you're white, black, male, female. And in that moment, in the moment where they believe they're all going to die, they achieve, let's be honest, what every religion throughout history has idealized as the goal of humanity. Like, there are I'm sure Ring will be more than willing to quote verbatim several Bible quotes that talk about how you are no longer Jew or Gentile, man or man or woman, free or slave.
That, well, actually, it's just the one verse.
Yeah, but you've got to everything there is a season. You've got, all these different things. We the people.
Yeah.
I have all of these things. They're all, and this is what we fail to recognize in the last 25 years. That this movie recognized that we don't, as a culture, is that whether you say I have a dream, or we the people, or no man is Gentile or Jew, or whatever the Muslims say, or whatever, whatever anyone says, however you word that, if you hold that belief in your heart, like, to me, I hold that belief of from each according to his ability to each according to his need. Other people hold it as we the people. Other people hold it as, the Declaration of Emancipation. However it is you hold it.
This
out of many one.
Out of many one people. That's the motto of Jamaica.
This movie holds it as the 4th of July is no longer an American holiday.
Yeah, we shall not go quietly into the night. However you hold it, what we fail to recognize as a species, but also culturally within that as well, is we all hold the same ideal and we all want the same thing. Or at least the decent ones of us do. We all just want to get on in life and live in peace. Imagine all the people. Maybe you hold it like that. John Lennon, lovely guy, shame he got shot in the back.
Yeah.
That's the point that this movie's making. Like, the point that this movie's making is it doesn't matter what language you say it in, how you word it. We all believe in the golden rule and we all believe in the ideal of peace, unity, and growth.
They did it in a way in the film that actually was unifying and actually made it feel like legitimate, like sincere, as opposed to like the beginning of the pandemic when you had a bunch of celebrities getting on there to sing John Lennon, Imagine. And it's like that just felt condescending as opposed to unifying.
Auld Lang Syne, Do They Know It's Christmas Time? These unifying songs. Like, I don't know, Did World Aid make it to America? I feel like it should have done. Like, do you know about World Aid, and do they know it's Christmas time and Bob Geldof and all that stuff from the 80s? And then again in the early 2000s they did it? Like,
I
songs that unify the people.
like, I don't think so, but or if it did, the culture I grew up in, ignored it.
Bree, like, you're not wrong, Bree, but damn, girl.
The thing is, but
Yeah.
but this is the point, right? The whole point is that speech is a Republican's wet dream.
Yeah.
It's also a socialist wet dream, and a Christian's wet dream, and a Muslim's wet dream, and anyone who wants what's best for humanity.
Same thing for an atheist, egalitarian. Like, it really doesn't matter. Like, it is very
That's
unifying.
the point. It's couched in Christian terms, but it's not a solely Christian idea, and it's designed to transcend Christianity,
to transcend really any belief, just to make it a oneness, like again, an egalitarian of we're all in this together.
It's like this movie more than anything taught me that I am susceptible to propaganda. The difference is
everybody is.
Yeah, everyone's susceptible to propaganda. Like, if you cried at this movie, you are susceptible to propaganda. The difference is you have to be aware of that, and you have to interrogate that, and that's what we've done for the last 3 hours. But this movie,
yeah,
the thing about propaganda is, right, propaganda doesn't exist in a vacuum. Most propaganda, you want to believe it. Like, the people propaganda is aimed at want to believe what that propaganda is selling.
And I'll give a hot take. Not all propaganda is necessarily bad. I mean, it really depends on the intention behind it, and the goal that it's trying to accomplish. Because something that gets people unified for a positive outcome, if you use propaganda, like, to do that, it's not an issue. Like, it's when it's being used, obviously, in, like, a negative way. And I wish that this propaganda film could, like, be shown to people and would speak to people and kind of have the outcome that you see at the end of the film of everybody kind of just getting their shit together and being collective as a whole. It's not going to happen, but it would be nice.
But that's the thing. I think in 1996, 1997, I think we believed it might happen. And that's the difference between then and now, right?
And then Al Gore had the election stolen from him, and it all went downhill from there, and we slid into the darkest timeline.
Yeah.
Well, but on that cheery note.
On that cheery note. But again, like, this movie, like, and again, this is why I said right at the start, this movie makes me cry. This movie makes me patriotic for an America that I know does not exist.
Yeah.
But the point is that America exists in my heart.
Well, like, and that's the thing. I'm not even America. It never existed, and now it likely never will.
But this is the thing. Pride makes me nostalgic for a time that never existed. Like, all these feel-good movies that end in people who've done activism coming together. It's the same feeling you get when you read the I Have a Dream speech or when you read the American Constitution. Like, that's what this is for, right? We are nostalgic for a time that didn't exist.
Yeah.
Because there's still a part of us, jaded and broken and brought low as we are from 25 years of what we've seen after this movie came out. There's still a tiny part of us. There's a tiny little spark. I think we still believe. Like, we hope. We don't necessarily believe, but we hope.
Yeah.
And the thing about hope is, right, hope's really dangerous.
Yeah.
Hope's not perfect. Like, we've all seen Shawshank Redemption. We know what hope can do to a person. But what we have to do, and what we have to learn to do as a culture, and I think as a species, is stop living in the clouds of that hope and start actually doing things that will get us there, rather than just using that hope as a propaganda piece.
Yeah.
That's the That's the takeaway for me. Like, for me, the takeaway is not abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Like, that's not the takeaway for me. The takeaway for me is you still have hope. Now get off your ass and do something with it.
Yeah, the takeaway is less abandon all hope and more it's like in the old stories, Mr. Frodo.
Yeah. And it is, and it's that nostalgia for a time that never existed that we tell ourselves as a story. It is a bedtime story for grown-ups. Like the ideal of democracy and a socialist utopia in which everyone is taken care of and everyone only works as much as they need to and everyone is broadly equal and has equitable opportunity. Like, this is a bedtime story for grown-ups. But another thing about bedtime stories, they've got a kernel of truth in them.
Yeah.
And that's my takeaway from this. Like, I can see the propaganda. I can see the... I can see... Look, this movie is camp. It's bad, right? It's the CGI is ridiculous. The characters are two-dimensional and
even the practical effects are pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, even for a 25-year-old movie, they're ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, this movie is not by any stretch special.
Yeah.
It's, it was the first movie that showed the White House being blown up, and then every apocalypse movie since then has done that. But...
Well, because it had an emotional impact, on Americans. Well, I mean, and maybe on other parts of the world too, but especially on Americans.
I mean, seeing the White House blown up definitely hits different since January 6th as well.
Yeah.
Like, that shit hits different.
But, like, the movie itself aged very poorly, but the optimism and hope that it carries and the way it communicates that it doesn't really feel like it aged at all.
I don't think the ideas aged. I think we did.
Yeah.
And therein lies the problem.
Yeah. Well, and also, like, the movie came out in what?
96.
96. So I was 10 years old when the movie came out.
I was about 4 or 5.
I am not as optimistic, and I've become much more jaded and cynical and world weary. So, like, looking back on it, like, regardless of recent events with the pandemic and seeing it in a new light, or, January 6th in the new light, there is very much that bright-eyed optimism of a child, and then going back and realizing that it was naivety, like not like, I don't know, like, kind of like my train of thought just crashed at the station there. But
no, like, this is what I was saying earlier. Like, it's a naivety and it's a childishness, but that doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah,
it's still something we can hope for.
Changed.
I just realize, or at least I expect, again, jaded and cynical, that it'll never happen.
And, putting that, change into context is why we spent basically like a good 75% of this stream talking about current politics.
Yeah. Because this movie cannot, like, if you tried to release a movie like this now, where a center-right Republican president stood up and made a speech like that, like, first of all, there would be no black people or queers in his audience, because we wouldn't go to listen to the fucker. Second of all, like, are there any moderate Republicans anymore?
Honestly, I can't think of any. Like, even Romney has shifted more to the right with the party.
No, they are. They all just call themselves Democrats now.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's true. But, like, the Overton window in this country has shifted so far to the right. Like, when it comes down to it, Obama was the best Republican president we've had in a generation. If you go policy by policy, like Obama and Reagan were not too dissimilar, which is kind of terrifying when you think about it. But
Yes, because the priorities of the American electorate changed. Like
Yeah.
what the American electorate was voting for when it elected Reagan is not what the American electorate was voting for when it elected Obama.
Yeah.
That's what changed. Like race became a big thing again. And other things like from the outside looking in, the reason I wanted Obama to win was because he promised to close Guantanamo Bay. And any idiot who understands how international diplomacy works understands that if you as a country are being slammed at the UN by Vladimir fucking Putin
for an
having,
extrajudicial prison,
yeah, then you do not have a moral high ground to talk about democracy and human rights. And that's a problem when you're supposed to be the leader of the free world.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what he promised to solve by closing Gitmo. It just didn't happen that way.
I mean, he made a lot of promises. Like, he wasn't a bad president, but he wasn't a great one either.
But
like, he was mid.
But again, Obama didn't run on a slogan of change. Obama ran on a slogan of hope. That's the difference.
And it makes it even more depressing.
Mm.
So, any final thoughts? Because we should probably be wrapping this up.
Yeah, we probably should. I wasn't expecting some random like action flick to go for 3.5 hours of chat on Ion.
Lo siento. Like, I know I dragged our train off the rails a few times, but I think it all like ties in well, you know, because it is about American culture as much as it is politics and, you know, the aliens, because like it all weaves together into this, you know, tapestry to create this film.
But this is the thing, right? In 1996, the aliens came from outer space and we were all human. In 2023, the aliens come from a country across the sea and we're the humans and they're not. That's the difference. And that's a cultural shift, and that's a shift in the rhetoric.
Yeah.
So, final thoughts.
One last comment. In 1997, we reached out to people across the ocean to stand together with them. By the time we're talking about it now, there's a wall built to stop them coming. Like, let's be here. We want to stop the boats and build a wall.
Yeah.
And so, even when they get their way, it doesn't go the way that they expected. Here in Florida, fuck Santis, the governor. He went into effect yesterday, where cracking down on immigration, requiring, like, if someone goes to a hospital, you are supposed to ask them, you know, for their papers, kind of thing. And a lot of undocumented people have fled the state. And because of that, we have crops in like orange fields and shit just rotting. We've got jobs being left undone because a good chunk of our workforce relied on undocumented immigrants. And not only did they flee the state, so we don't have the workers, but truckers are now threatening to boycott the state as well because of the policies. So things could get pretty bad here pretty quick.
Like, just to build on that for a sec, I've got a friend who used to work in a sandwich shop in South Dakota, and she used to say to me, Noodle, I know when ICE have raided the chicken factory because the pieces of chicken start coming through with bones in them, because they've had to recruit new illegal, quote-unquote illegal immigrants to go in to do the job, and they haven't learned the job yet, and they're not fast enough to get all the bones out. before it gets shipped up and sent. Like she actively has said that to me. And it's like, has it occurred to you that if the basis of your economy is these people, you should make them citizens?
Well, but here's the thing. That would still put a ding in the economy because they're paid less than minimum wage to do jobs that most Americans
Claw that
would
back in
refuse to
taxes.
do.
Claw that back in taxes.
No, I'm not saying I agree with it, but I'm just saying,
'cause
like, as it
won't
stands
make
right
a ding.
now.
The thing is, it won't make a ding in the economy. It will make a ding in the pockets of the billionaires who run the factories.
And then that would get passed on to the taxpayers where they increase our taxes while still lowering corporate taxes.
I know, but it's just, you would think common sense would apply, right? If someone is required to keep your business going, you don't kick them out.
Greed trumps common sense every time. Man, this ended really depressingly.
Yeah.
To be fair, this movie is depressing when you really look into it. Like
it is.
You know, you're talking about common sense when, you know, four billionaires dragged a 19-year-old to his death in an unsafe submarine.
You're talking about common sense where some fucker built a wall with holes in it.
Oh, by the way, the guy on TikTok that made the song My Dumb Stepdad's Drowning in a Submarine, chilling at the Blink show, gonna get his money, finished the song, and it released like 2 days ago. So you can go find it. It's called Sync 182, and it is on Spotify. You're fucking welcome. You're
the fact that we
welcome.
are laughing. No, but the fact that we are laughing at that, the fact that 4 human beings died, that tells you how divided we are as a culture.
Yeah.
Like, yes, they were billionaires, so they barely count as human beings. But even that statement is bound up in the fact that our culture has shifted that much.
Yeah.
I mean, we're getting to the, you know, let them brioche, even though I know that she didn't likely actually say that.
He didn't
say
that.
No, like, I know that. Like, but like we are getting to that thing where like we're getting to heads are going to start rolling, like eat the rich is going to be more than just a catchy phrase for those on the left in the anti-capitalist.
You hear the people singing the song of angry men. Yes, I know it's the wrong French Revolution, but France had a bunch in that era.
And when it comes down to it, nobody does a revolution like the French. And they seem to do it a lot more than the rest of us.
Too badly.
But the French do it more.
Yeah. To be fair, like, the French are always revolting. Like, that's what they're for. Like,
and
if the wine's too warm, the French go out on strike for a week. There's nothing wrong with that. I actually think it's awesome. But the French will go out if the cheese is too... You know,
like, petrol's getting more expensive. They want to put a tax on petrol that will affect the people on the bottom. Not having that shit. To the streets, mon ami. Allons-y.
Yeah. But this is the thing, like, this movie gives you that same sense of deep, I want to make things better, I want to be part of that growing future, as watching something like Les Mis. As being part, you know, as the last 5 minutes of Pride, as all these things, because that's union or onion, Robert. Sorry, literally, I looked and I was like, better onion laws. They probably have those too, to be fair. Yeah. But this is the thing, like the French are revolting. Yes, aren't they always?
No, see, it's only a revolution if it's in France. Otherwise, it's just a sparkling revolt.
Fucking champagne joke. I love you.
There's way too much accuracy in that statement.
That's great. So for anyone, I know our audience here is smart, but anyone who stumbles across this and doesn't understand the joke. So champagne, everybody knows what that is. Well, by law, champagne can only come from one region essentially, and France. And any sparkling wine outside of that is only allowed to be called sparkling wine. Like, you can't get the label of champagne if it doesn't come from that region.
But the
So
thing is, right? The French
that was
have
their joke.
the French have revolutions and the rest of us have sparkling revolts. But the British absolutely will try and make a knockoff version and call it like English Revolution and somehow get away with it because they've got insiders in the European Union writing the laws.
But
maybe less so now that they basically said fuck you to the EU with the whole Brexit thing.
I mean,
I wouldn't put it
I still
past
don't
them to be
necessarily
petty
think that was
bitches.
the wrong choice. I just think the way it was handled here in Britain was wrong.
yeah. But anyways, we should be
but let's
wrapping
not
up.
get into that. Yeah. So, final thoughts. This movie is about hope and a nostalgia for a life and a time and an America and a world that never existed. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't hold it as an ideal to work towards.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree. Like, it gets the member berries in there, but for a time that never existed, but could have existed and might still, if collectively as a species we can get our shit together and work together towards a more egalitarian future where we do reach that. It wasn't a utopia, but like I said earlier, it very much had the feel of a post-racial, post-discrimination world where, people were judged not for immutable characteristics, but for, who they were and what they did.
And their choices.
And their choices. And that is a message that transcends time, transcends culture, transcends, political ideology. And it is something that we can hope and strive for, I think.
The movie is aged rather poorly, but the dream it carries in its themes still ring as inspirational as they did in the 90s.
Give us bread, but give us roses.
Yeah. And with that, we'll move on to Shilling. Kitty?
I would say check out my TikTok, Kitty the Atheist on there. I've been participating in the Brat Wars, and they're trying to raise money and awareness for Take Back the Night Foundation, which helps survivors of SA. So it's a good cause, and we're having a fucking boatload of fun over there. Yeah, come join. Have fun.
Noodle?
I have an ongoing questionnaire online that's part of my thesis. If you have lost someone to COVID-19 during the lockdowns and you're willing to talk about it, please fill in the questionnaire and I will be in touch. I will drop a link in the chat.
And the link is in the doodly-doo.
Doobly-doo. Yeah. Also, go check out John and Hank Green Vlog Brothers. They've got like 15 years of content and they're fucking hilarious.
And if none of that applies to you, share the link out. Maybe you'll reach someone who it does apply to them.
Yeah.
And next week, we were gonna do Chirac next week, but given how sports discourse in the UK has gone, we're going to be doing Bend It Like Beckham. And
great movie.
Noodle's gonna have fun because this will be the first time I've seen it.
Yeah, this is a movie from my childhood that very much speaks to my experience as Indian descent mixed race child in the UK in the early 2000s. Like, I was like 5 years younger than the main character, so our culture is very similar. I was also a massive David Beckham fan because we all have faults. But Give the movie a chance. It did, and remember when you watch the movie, it was progressive for its time. That's the only thing I'm going to say up front, and we'll talk more about it next week. But it was very progressive. Like, I was shocked by it watching it for its time, and so are a lot of my friends and family.
Yeah.
So
taglines.
Be gay, do crime, and let's fight for a better world.
Take care, be good, and if you can't be good, remember, use your noodle.
And remember, the purpose of a good storyteller is not to tell you what to think, but to give you questions to think on. Too often, we forget that.